Date was the 27th of June. There was a subcommittee meeting. Wait a minute.
It was the goals.
I think
I think Bob sorted that one out.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so you got.
Yeah, he must have forgotten to copy
Does
you.
anyone have
Oh, yeah.
any comments on the minutes from December 15th?
Okay. No, you've got it.
Do you have a full copy?
I
I think this
don't.
is.
Oh, yeah.
There's 2 pages.
Second page, yeah.
There's 2 pages. If anyone wants another copy, I've got one here. Lorna, you can't call her, but you can
Thank
catch her.
you. I just got one.
On the attendees list,
Nancy,
Boland.
sorry, name went from my surname. What is, she's from the Democratic Party.
Cronenberg?
Yes.
Oh,
That,
yes.
thank you.
Yeah.
And how do you, it's K-A.
K-R-O-N.
K-O.
B-E-R-G. She's
Yeah.
in Democratic Town.
Corenberg?
Cronenberg.
No, I don't think there's any R. Cronenberg.
Oh.
K-O-N-N. Is there an R?
No, it's okay. I'll get it. I don't know at all.
Meeting with her tomorrow, so.
Yeah, well, I met
That's-
with her today, but,
Okay.
anyway.
Confirming the R after the K in Cronenberg.
Oh, it is, yes, okay.
So there is an R.
Yeah.
Oh, Cronenberg, okay.
So C-R-O-I-N-G.
No, it's K-R.
Oh,
Okay, I did actually write K-R, so it's K-R-O-I-N-G.
No,
No
hang on,
R's.
just wait. K-R-O-N-E-N-B-E-R-G.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry.
Now if I work out what
I
Cronin
thought
is,
you were
know.
saying K-O-R-N, and I knew that wasn't right.
That's right. That wasn't right.
Claude, there was something that you were fine with what I wrote about. Oh, okay. Are we live?
I think so.
Okay.
I could put that on Facebook.
YouTube, right?
I couldn't give them the link. That's the only problem.
Oh, do you have slides to show us?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. You got an HDMI connection?
Yes, I believe I do.
Let's see what I can.
I think you all know why we requested this meeting. Claude's been working this time on the agenda, because Claude's been working with the recycling committee, and we just want to go around and
Well,
meet
before
with
we get that, I
various.
just wanna make sure people were looking through the
Oh,
minutes. Is there
I'm
anything else
sorry.
on? No, that's okay. I just wanted
Assuming you think.
to, okay, because we need to, so everyone's good?
Nope, sorry. I was trying to get YouTube and unfortunately it came on to some advert.
Oh, yeah, still reading.
You could check if we're live. that would be-
No,
yeah.
I think it's going to be too complicated for minutes and
Okay.
check.
Oh, okay. I'll do it.
Can't multitast that much.
Ellen, you,
Are all the
Okay.
minutes okay?
okay,
Yes.
good. I'll entertain a motion to approve the December 5th meetings,
So-
minutes.
So moved.
Any other discussion? Those-
Second.
Oh, sorry, we need a
I'll
second. Thanks, Bill. Any other discussion on the minutes? All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Okay. Approved, I abstained from voting because I wasn't here. Great, so now, yes, Lon, you're on, thank you.
Just really briefly, because
Yeah.
the bulk of the time should go to Claude and the slideshow and what goes with the slideshow, but we've been working, the recycling committee's been working for about a year now on developing this report on the transfer station.
Okay,
And we've made some very interesting discoveries with data to back it up, and are going to be submitting some recommendations. And we are going to be meeting with the school committee, the Board of Selectmen, on January 22nd, so the last meeting in January. And we're just looking for feedback from the various committees. and eventually support.
Okay, all right, so, interesting, none of the menus right now. Oh, I have to connect, to the internet. I have to open up a browser and. So we're also going to the solid waste, or the recycling facility in Billerica on Friday, day after tomorrow. So if somebody wants to, I assume we can invite additional people.
Sure, I don't think there's a limit for the tour. Debbie and Helen are going with us.
My daughter, who's actually been working on reducing the trash for St Andrews University, as her job, would like to come along and compare.
Is she here?
Yes, compare a Scottish recycling centre to an American one.
Absolutely.
Did you say I was going along?
Helen Lyons.
Oh, okay.
But you're welcome, Helen.
I babysat on Friday, so I couldn't.
This is news to you, was it
Yes,
last
right.
evening?
Wait a minute.
It's at 9:30 at Billerica, isn't it?
Yes. Trying to remember the name of the street, I sent it out this morning.
Okay, I think I'm connected now to the internet. Let's see. Okay, yes, it looks like I am. So if I go here, where do you do a presentation? Present, here it is, okay. So, they put together this little slideshow. It's based on the report, but it's sort of a condensed version. This, I suppose, is the disadvantage of using Google Slides as opposed to having it right on your computer. But it should work. Okay, here we go. All right, so Massachusetts landfills, since 1920, over 900 landfills have closed in Massachusetts. Carlisle's closed in 1972, and there's 20 of them that remain. That, you know, sort of all of Massachusetts. This is a histogram of when they closed, and you can see, I guess in the mid-70s, the state got much stricter about how you could operate a landfill, and so a lot of them were closed because they couldn't, meet the standards. But ours actually closed a little bit before that, apparently. So, but you ask, well, who cares, right? I mean, Carlisle burns its trash, right? So, well, yes, at the Wheelabrator facility in North Andover, but 10% by weight remains after you burn it. So, and that has to go into a landfill, and that's the rather nasty part of the solid waste that is probably has more toxic, a higher concentration of toxic stuff than the original mixture. So the Mass DEP has a solid waste master plan. It's the 2010 to 2020 plan, and they set a 30% reduction from the 2008 baseline. I don't know why they chose 2008. And so we had a statewide tonnage of 6.5 million in 2008. Now we're down to 5.6 million, and that's a 14% statewide reduction. Carlisle, in that same time frame, has done only a 3% reduction.
Wow.
So, but doesn't Carlisle do a good job of recycling? Well, yes, we're 37th in Massachusetts among 283 towns that report recycling rates. There's 351 towns, not all of them are reporting, so we don't, but amongst the ones that report, so we're in the top 40, and that's pretty good. But how do we compare in solid waste tonnage? Well, we're number 5 in terms of the most tonnage, and we're in pretty good company with Chatham, Westboro, Southboro, and Avon.
The only one I've heard of is Chatham.
Yeah,
Oh, Westboro, Southboro.
West.
Yeah.
They're,
I know
Avon,
Westboro
I'm not
is,
sure
yeah.
exactly where Avon is. So to give you an idea of what that means in terms of 33-gallon barrels per week, that is roughly, in our case, 2 1/4. And that assumes actually a little bit less than actually 20 pounds per barrel. So if you look at the bordering towns, Acton, Bedford, Billerica, Chelmsford, Concord, and Westford, you know, we're the highest, which is not surprising. And you can see that Acton, which does pay-as-you-throw, is quite low. Concord does a form of pay-as-you-throw. They have curbside, but you have to buy stickers if you go beyond 1 barrel. Well, you have to buy a sticker even for 1 barrel, but if you want to put out 2 barrels, you have to have a sticker. And you could put out no barrels. Well, I should say there's 2 kinds of things you can do in Concord. You can put a sticker on your barrel for 6 months, and you pay on the order of like $100 for that. Or you can buy tags that you put on your barrel, and they get ripped off each time the trash in that barrel is collected. So it's a form of pay-as-you-throw, but it's not the kind of, it's not a transfer station type of pay-as-you-throw.
How many of these towns have transfer stations like ours, as opposed to curbside pickup?
Acton has a transfer station.
But it's not, they also have, don't they? No, they don't. Sorry.
No,
You know, Billerica has curbside waste management. Concord, I can go in more to detail here. Billerica has, you get a 48-gallon tote, 2 of them, 1 for recycling and 1 for trash. And I think you have to pay $65 for each of them initially, you know, to buy them. And you pay that to waste management. Then you have to pay an extra $100 per additional solid waste tote that you want to have.
Okay. Well, so I guess what I'm interested in is, and you may be getting to this, if you are, I can wait, but the thing is, what's different about Carlisle? Are we truly throwing out a lot more than these other ones, Acton, or is Acton throwing their stuff out in different ways that doesn't get counted compared to the stuff we're counting?
Or are other people dumping it our dump?
Yeah, that's why the other towns are so low.
wouldn't that
Yeah,
be nice?
those are good questions, and that's
School bus
kind
from
of,
Concord
the short
dumping
answer
it
is we
to
don't really know.
Well,
There's a mystery, and it could be a whole combination of these things.
Bordering towns.
And we address some of that is going to be addressed, but not in a definitive way.
Okay.
It's not like, oh yeah, this
But
is exactly why.
I can speak to Acton just briefly, because I think that's really the poster child for doing
Yeah,
everything
well,
right.
it would appear.
They do a phenomenal job, and both Clyde and I have gone separately to visit the transfer station in Acton. I will tell you that everything they do gets counted. They are very efficient, very organized, but everything is sorted. So I think there probably are some differences between how they count, what they count, and what we're doing here. But
And is it
they're
town
not
employees
cheating.
do it, or is it a
Town
contractor?
employees.
Yeah, they actually own their trucks. They own the
Just
drivers.
like us.
Town employees drive their trucks. So, you know,
They're 1/6 for disposal rate. It's something doesn't add up. I mean, no matter how good they are, they're not that, I mean, I think my wife and I try to be careful about what we throw out. We recycle everything we can. I can't imagine getting down to, even 50% of what we throw out somehow by doing something different. So, that's the reason. It's sort of weird.
but what it could be is that everybody in Acton behaves the way you do,
Yeah.
and
Not here.
the vast majority of people here do not,
Yeah, it takes us a month to get
or half the
barrel of
people in
trash,
Carlisle
but
don't behave the way
We've
you
only
do.
got 2 in our house, but the average in Carlisle is only 3, 2.9, so Acton can't be that much smaller per household.
Well, I think Claude raises a really good point, and those are some of the questions that we need to throw out, because Acton's very consistent in its behavior. And they've added a composting program, but they were still doing extremely well. It was the addition of pay-as-you-throw that really caused a dramatic drop. but also the way they have the transfer station organized, and the monitoring that they have on site makes an enormous difference, and that helps get that consistency person to person. I think on that 37th, which is, top 40 for recycling, we're doing a good job, but remember, that's relative to other towns in the state, right? That doesn't mean it's the best it could be, but regardless, we've got a problem with the solid waste tonnage, and
What's the definition of the recycling rate? Is that
The
the
amount of
percentage
tonnage.
of recyclable materials that end up in the trash, or is that something else?
it's the amount of material that's collected as recyclable, but all of it is not necessarily recycled. Some of that material is
Understood.
but trash.
Right.
But the number that you're getting there is the amount collected.
That's the pounds
Collected.
collected, so
To be
it's
recycled.
actually an amount, okay. So if we just throw out a lot, we'll score high on that one. Assuming we recycle recyclable stuff, if we're just throwing out a lot, we'll have more recyclable stuff too.
It's cheating, but yes.
All right, it doesn't mean it doesn't mean we're recycling a higher percentage of our recyclables.
Right.
I think
So-
there was a chart when, before Acton went to pay-as-you-throw, there was a chart where Acton was really high, like up with us, on the trash levels.
But yeah, people throwing their stuff out in other ways, it just seems phenomenal to me, and I try to imagine how the average family would reduce their disposal by a factor of 6 or 5 or whatever it is.
Well, although I will say.
It's quite interesting, when you start really, really looking at it, it's quite interesting to see how you
Okay.
just start avoiding
Yeah, we should
buying
keep
things.
going, but
Three barrels a week. I have the average household of 3 people. I cannot imagine generating 3 full trash barrels every week. I don't know what I'd put in it
Well,
to get
so-
that much.
Well, the other thing you have to realize is that pretty much everybody around us, except maybe Westford, but I would imagine Westford too, I have to investigate them, they're regulating how much trash you can throw out, right? You have to
But
pay
that's
if
but
it goes beyond a certain amount.
I'm not worried about them. I'm just saying, for me personally, I can't imagine how I would get to
Right.
33 gallons a week.
Right.
That's a huge amount of trash.
Well, what I'm saying is that there may be some trash coming from other communities into our community, one way or another. Either because people are coming to dump without a sticker, or they're getting kind of a renegade sticker. They have a friend in Carlisle who gets a sticker for their second car, but gives it to them, so the
Mhm.
license plate doesn't match. You may have contractors from Carlisle who take jobs outside of Carlisle, or even inside of Carlisle, and instead of getting a dumpster, which is the traditional way of doing it, is that, hey, I can go to my dump and it's relatively inexpensive, so I'll just,
Right.
every day or every week after, at the end of the week, I just fill up the pickup truck, I go to the Carlisle dump and I dump it.
Right.
So there could be all kinds of, because we're this island in the middle of pay-as-you-throw sort of restricted disposal communities, I'd imagine there's a pressure. It's like, New Hampshire without sales tax, right? There's a flux across the border because it's cheaper there, right? I mean, we're essentially like in New Hampshire as far as no sales tax when it comes to dumping. So there's going to, even though it's not legal, there's going to be an incentive to do it. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's something happening along those lines that contributes to these numbers.
do we know what percentage of our waste is the construction waste?
That's all sorted out in the table.
Yeah, I don't have this table in this presentation.
But is it a high percentage? Because not all town, certainly if you're doing curbside, they're not counting any of that.
No,
That's
that's counted in recycling. That's not,
Yeah, you should
construction
have
debris is in recycling.
Dumpster?
The
No.
dumpster is in recycling, the construction dumpster is in our recycling, because that goes to Fort Devens.
It's diverted, okay,
Okay,
it's
so it's not
diverted
counted
out of
as
No,
solid
this is the
waste.
stuff that goes into our
All right,
trash
okay.
dumpster.
Okay, got it. I'll shut up now.
So how do some towns get get low solid waste numbers? Well, pay as you throw is the sort of the answer. And this is a quote from a study done by the EPA and I guess the New York based Green Waste Solutions. And so you can see there's sort of a 50% reduction that they found on average when you go to pay as you throw. So if you took our numbers and divided them in half, then we start to be I think, more, not as outstanding, shall we say.
So where's the trash, the other half of the trash go?
Well, that's one, we'll come to that slide.
Just
It's a Thursday.
It's magic.
backyard.
Just
Right. What would pay-as-you-throw look like in Carlisle? Well, you'd have these bags. This is traditionally the way it's done. Littleton does it this way, and Acton as well. So you pay for these bags, basically, and they would be sold at Burns, probably exclusively, just because I don't see any other retailer being interested in, stocking this item. In other towns, like in Littleton, there's like half a dozen different stores that stock them, Donovan's, Market Basket, blah, 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 but we've only got one store in Carlisle. The other thing I wanted to point out about Acton and the difference with Carlisle is it's a much bigger town. So if they have 3 people on site at the transfer station full-time when it's open. So that means that they're at an advantage, because they can put one person at the entrance and monitor who comes in and be very strict about that. I've said this many times, we don't have the economies of scale like that in Carlisle. So we're less than a third of Acton. So if we have one transfer station employee, that's a lot per household, but it means that there's one person who has to do everything, and they can't be everywhere at once, no matter how hard they try. Which means it's a lot easier for somebody to come in and leave without ever encountering somebody who might be able to monitor what they're actually doing. So what doesn't fit in trash bags, you have then a fee schedule for that kind of stuff that would look like this. This is the one from Littleton. And so how would the transfer station be reconfigured? Well, we would put a little guard, we buy a guard shack and put it there with nice visibility so that one person sitting there can see all 3 dumpsters. I'm proposing we have cameras on each dumpster so that we record exactly who puts what in the dumpsters at all times. So if there's an issue, we can go back and look and see, okay, well that was Fred, who put that thing in the dumpster. We would take these 3 dumpsters here, which is the 2 plastic and the tin or steel and aluminum, and those would go into this dumpster here, which is a compactor, so that we would end up with fewer trips to our recycling facility because we're compacting. We don't have these dumpsters full of air, mostly going to the Billerica facility. And this becomes possible because we expect that we would reduce at least by 44% the trash going into this dumpster. So instead of needing 2 dumpsters, we'd only need 1, and then we could use this one for this stuff.
For ease of running through the trash, wouldn't it be better to have this one for the cans so that you could go trash recycling, and then another one car can come up and go trash recycling?
Make this one the trash one.
Yeah,
Well, but then we
middle
still
one,
have,
the
we still
recycling.
have then we'd have cardboard trash.
Oh, sorry, you
still-
haven't got rid of the cardboard, sorry,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
forgot about that, sorry.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Yeah, I mean, you might have to make 2 trips through, depending, the second time if you really don't want to walk from one dumpster to the other. But you're doing a lot of people typically are doing a lot of walking with plastic and so on and so forth already, because they're not going from, they park once kind of and then they make trips. So what about the dump sticker fee? Well, the dump stickers I'm proposing are free for all vehicles registered in Carlisle. Dump stickers will be available at the transfer station in this little guard shack from the new booth. And a computer would allow queries to see which households already have received their annual free bag voucher. Now the free bag voucher means that you would get 12 of these pay-as-you-throw 33-gallon bags for free, which is a $33 value. So you save $25 by not buying a dump sticker, and you get $33 of free pay-as-you-throw trash bags. And you can bring your composting to the transfer station. So Black Earth Compost will be there. These trucks won't be there, but there'll be bins that these trucks service. And you can throw away your compost for free, which will reduce the amount that you have to put in these $2.75 bags. So how does this benefit me? Less, meaning the Carlisle citizen, not me in particular. Less congestion at the transfer station, one stop for steel, aluminum, plastic, unloading times for solid waste are cut in half because you have half the tonnage actually going in. No need to lift plastic up into dumpsters and push away overflowing plastic. You have a free dump sticker. Your out-of-pocket cost can drop if you recycle and compost. We reduce the town of Carlisle property tax burden $100,000 the first year because we need to buy a booth, a camera system, additional labor, and a computer. Otherwise, annually thereafter, it'd be about $130,000 savings. Where do we accrue this benefit? Well, it's the 44% reduction in solid waste, and reduced tipping fees, reduced transportation costs to the Wheelabrator incinerator, and also some reduction in trips to Billerica because of the compaction of the plastic.
Does that cost savings include the FTE that we're gonna have to purchase?
The what?
Well, so
Full-time equivalent.
So just one thing there, if we go to pay-as-you-throw, we qualify, we're eligible for a grant that's specifically for pay-as-you-throw towns. And some of the grant funds are available to hire a part-time person for the monitoring, which is what generally is needed, particularly as a startup, at the startup of any pay-as-you-throw program, because that's where the enforcement is really
I'm not talking
critical.
about the monitoring, I'm talking about the guy that's in the booth. It's
Well-
a full-time equivalent, it's a full-time employee.
well, my feeling, well, so we're gonna save on trucking costs, so there's hourly savings in terms of, FTE, because you're doing fewer trips to the incinerator, and there's some savings potentially to Billerica as well. And my feeling is that with the cameras and, we have to leverage ourselves because we don't have the economies of scales of these other towns. So we have to take technology and make up the difference. And my feeling is that if you have cameras, people are going to be much more careful about what they do because they're going to be right on camera. If there's an issue, we can look back and see, what's going on. Or if a guy happens to not be in the booth and he notices something happening, he can go back, rewind, and look and see, and get a license plate number, and call the police and say, hey, there was this guy, we need to talk to him about this or her. So my feeling is that I think to make this program work, we have to stick with the same number of FTEs, but I think we can do it. I think the booth is going to make it possible when the guy's in the booth to supervise 3 dumpsters easily, because it'll be up higher, the windows will let them. I mean, these shacks they have now are like horrible because it's like a duck blind. It's not
Falling down
designed.
anyway.
What?
They need to be replaced anyway.
Yes, they're not. They're long, a little bit long in the tooth.
So Bill, I'm not clear, I mean, we already have at least one person on Saturdays, there are usually 2 attendants there at the transfer station. So are you anticipating that we'd need a person in addition to the one person who's already on site?
Yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that, and I think we can get away without it. Initially, I think we're gonna need, and later on I say this, that we
Get the
need
grant.
like 6 weeks or so of additional labor, like full-time when the thing's open, to tell people, look, this is the way it works, hey, no, that doesn't go there, that goes over here, this is where you buy the sticker, or where you get the sticker, this is, bulky items go here, da-da-da-da-da. But generally speaking, I talk to these other towns, after that period, people kind of get it, because that 6-week window means pretty much everybody's gone through it once. And then I think between the cameras and, the person that's already there, 2 on Saturdays, only 1 on Tuesday and Thursdays, I think we can get away with it. That's my feeling.
Yeah, and that monitor that the grant would provide for is not a full-time person, just there during the transfer station operating hours, right? So
What if we reduce the numbers of days it was open? I mean, how many people use it on a Tuesday and Thursday compared to Saturdays?
because it starts at 10 in the morning.
No, but I mean, it's interesting. I mean, if you got concerned about that, if you said no, actually, we're doing it Wednesday and Saturday.
Like Acton's only open till 3 during the weekdays, so we could do 10 to 3, or we could do, 2 to 2 to 7 or
Yeah.
3 to
I
7.
think you get it by the voters, you don't wanna cut the hours at the same time to do this, you know.
Okay, I'm
Try to
just,
make it work.
I
With
just
7
would,
hours.
it'd be interesting to see how many people actually go during the week. I don't know
I
if they've
think-
got
I
the
think the
data for that. Certainly, we start
Well,
putting
we try to
cameras
people
up,
like
it'd be
we do.
very easy to capture that data over like 3 months.
So,
Yeah.
February is probably apparently the really bad
12 to
time.
7.
so.
like 12 to 7, just cut out 2 hours, that would give us, 6 hours in a week, well, 4 hours, I guess, but that's something, that would, I don't know, I mean, that is another change, but to what extent would that really impact what happens in town? If you're retired, you generally have a little bit of flexibility in terms of when you can go.
Just one thing I didn't see is what happens to mixed paper and newspaper. Yeah,
Well, that might be, we'll see, it'll be a slide in just a second.
okay.
So what happens to the 44% reduction of solid waste? This is, I think, your question and Bill's question, right? So these are some of the, not necessarily from most of the tonnage to least. These are just some ideas about what's happening. So more recycling through redemption centers, scrap metal buyers, etc. More leaf, yard waste, and grass and food composting. More donations to charity. More repair and reuse than replacement. Hand-me-downs. Hoarders, just accumulates in the basement. People take trash to work. You can give it to people or relatives who live in non-pay-as-you-throw communities, which might be happening to us right now, right? So, some people with second vacation homes bring home trash, but, it may go the other way, or,
Well, Chatham had this really high waste, didn't they? They had the
Yeah.
worst, and that's a holiday place, and where people get off the boat from Nantucket, isn't it? With their trash.
not Nantucket.
Is it not Nantucket?
No, that's Hyannis, but,
I'm just
with a lot of
thinking
vacation, a lot of restaurants, it may be that it's, the summertime population swells and they have a lot of hotels and things like that may cause that. Reduction in illegal dumping from non-residents who live in pay-as-you-throw municipalities who can no longer get away with dropping off their trash illegally on the curb. I don't really understand that one. I put that one in. That comes from the state.
It's curb pickups, when towns that have curb pickups.
Okay. Oh, I see. With pay-as-you-throw. So that only applies to a curbside situation. So that doesn't apply to our case. Change your buying habits. So I sometimes just take stuff out of a cardboard box and styrofoam or whatever. I just leave it there. Say,
leave the packaging at the
at the store and
shop.
say, you guys deal with it. I don't want it.
It's one way to put pressure on the system.
Yeah. Okay. Take it. So a retailer. So somebody may have had a washing machine dryer replaced, and then they're like, oh well, I know Fred. He'll take it in the pickup truck to the dump because it's free. I don't want to pay the $50 to the retailer or whatever to take it. But now it's like, okay, I have to ask my friend to do it. Plus, I have to pay the sticker fee. I'll just have the retailer do it. So that. Can happen, and then you're going to have people who opt out of the system, maybe, and use your garbage disposal more. And you can recycle plastic bags at Lowe's, Macy's, Big Y Foods, Hannaford, Roach Brothers, Shaw Star Market. I mean, plastic bags aren't like a huge weight thing, but
14 out of that.
what'd you say?
Take 14 out of that.
14?
Former board of health person.
Right. I was thinking about that.
Since most of us don't
so
have
you
them.
think I should get rid of that one? All right, that's good advice. Thank you, Bill.
The
I was
garbage
wondering about that because we
disposal
don't want to
one?
encourage.
Yes.
Exactly.
Not legal to have them.
Oh, it's not legal to have.
We
I
don't.
thought
No,
it
you
was.
can
it is.
have, but you have to have
Because-
an oversized septic.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which so you have to design your septic system differently, but you can put one in with a non-qualified septic. Blah blah blah. Yeah. Okay, so it's probably not a good thing to put in there. Okay.
Yeah.
So what will pay-as-you-throw cost the town? $15,000 for the booth, $1,500 for the cameras and installation of a surveillance system, $1,000 with internet access for a computer in the booth because we want the we'll see that in the next slide. So this is, I'm not sure these slides are in order, in a good order here, but what we're talking about here is an independent comprehensive solution, and each piece depends on the other. So we've got composting, we're charging for solid waste, we're monitoring, and selling vouchers for bulk items, and we're compacting, commingling plastic, aluminum, steel. And those pieces, when you put them all together, they kind of work because, as you saw, we can free up space at the transfer station to make the traffic that we see there better. We can reduce, save money by compacting the recycling. All these pieces work together. So I'm going to go to, so here's, I think, what you were asking about, Helen. You would still have the paper dumpsters here,
Okay.
right? That wouldn't change. Clothing wouldn't change. This area here where you have motor oil, I think, and tires, that wouldn't change. Here, we moved the plastic and the steel and the aluminum over to here, and presumably we put the composting here. So these compost bins would be there, glass would stay where it is, and all these things, and cardboard would stay where it is. So all these things would be free, the way they are now. And the swap shed, you would have to pay the bulky item fee appropriate for whatever item it was that you're going to put in the swap shed, whether or not it got swapped. Because a lot of stuff in the swap shed ends up as trash, and
We know
it's
how
too
much?
complicated. Don't know.
50%?
My guess is it's 50%. Because when I talk to the guys, it's a bunch of work for them to clean it out.
And
Well, that
second,
could be another source of our high volume then, because this will go into the
People
incinerator,
don't
right?
realise, that's what they think they're taking it to the swap shed, and they don't realise that if it doesn't get picked up, it gets trashed. And I think that people, and that's the problem, and, we could have a charity shop, or something. I mean, in the
Well-
UK, we don't ever take anything that can be possibly reused to the dump or anything. We take it to the local charity shop, and all the high streets are just filled with charity shops now that have been selling they're taking their old stuff, and the money goes to charity when it's sold.
and
Yeah, well,
Acton-
Craigslist is kind of a virtual swap
Yeah.
shop, right? I mean, there you're
Oh, Facebook, you do it on
Facebook,
you do it
Free
on-
Cycle.
Yeah, but it's a lot of work. I mean, you gotta
Work,
be
yeah.
there to have somebody come to your
Yeah.
house. Yeah, there's a whole
Exactly,
lot of
that's
problems
why
in that.
in
It's
the
not gonna
UK, people
happen.
just
It's a
drop it
risk.
off at a shop,
Yeah.
and then they sort through it, and it's a big industry there.
So I'm not suggesting this, I'm just telling you how some other towns deal with it. Acton, their swap shed is manned completely by volunteers, and it's very specific hours, and there's somebody there, and they control what goes in.
Good.
And the transfer station staff have nothing to do with that, but it's a very nice shed, and the only thing they do is they let them site the swap shed there at the transfer station. Not sure if you saw that, but they're closed for the winter, by the way.
You think that's feasible in Carlisle?
I'm not saying that we should do it.
No, I know,
I'm saying they're,
but I'm asking the question.
I
I think it's a
don't-
great idea.
I don't know who would do it.
Yeah, I think the way to do it is you charge people to put stuff in there, and if they feel like,
I
it's
think it
just.
kind of defeats the purpose of
Yeah.
having it, this is my
Yeah.
thought, but,
No.
that's all.
And we
just
actually
throw it
get
out.
points for having a swap shed, don't we?
We do. So that's, when she's talking about the points, that's part of the point system that determines how much you get. We are eligible because of our population, for a grant anywhere from $28 to $9,400, I believe, or 28 to 9,400. And that depends on the points that you accrue based on what your operation is.
Well,
So
so
we get
ano-
that money now? No.
So another
Oh,
way to
well, no,
do it
we
would be to
apply.
say, okay, you can put anything you want in the swap shed, but, you have to put a sticker on it. And somehow that sticker's coded to you. And so if it ends up going in the trash, it's scanned and it goes on your account. And so it, at the end of the year, if you want to, or next year when you want to get your dump sticker, you have to pay up all your accrued swap shed, stuff that didn't get recycled, right? So then,
That deters people from swapping then.
well, it does, but if you have the swap
It's
shed as
real.
this place,
It's
then
real.
everybody's gonna say, oh, I'll just
Exactly.
put up all my stuff in the
I
swap
think you
shed,
do,
right?
these days people are, to take a picture of something and put it onto Facebook or Craigslist isn't that much hassle.
It's
I
way
have a
easier to
ton
take
of
it to
stuff that I could make money on doing that, and I haven't bothered to do it.
Yeah, we wouldn't bother.
So,
So about taking
We
it
don't
to the
return,
swap
we don't
shop.
return
No, I don't
our
think it's a swap
bottles
shed
to
either.
the
It sits
store.
in my
We take them
basement.
to the transfer
Station,
station.
right, you don't bother getting your
Cause it's
5
not, it's
cents.
not worth it,
Yeah.
you know, going back to
Your
the
soda
store.
bottles?
Yeah, we don't take them, we don't even
Same.
bother to return them.
And there are people who collect them at the transfer station
Right,
and they want
I'm
it
happy
for
to
the
have
money.
them do that.
But if we go with the
So we're not
compactor,
gonna- we're not
people
gonna go
who
through-
go at the
through
transfer
great
station
work.
with the
Yeah.
pens.
No, 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 I mean,
Or, but the point, I'm not
No,
dissing it,
just-
I'm saying we need an alternative.
I think we need a charity shop.
yeah.
Well, I think that's exactly what we need.
I mean, I think if people thought, hey, I'm doing this, I'm giving to them, people sell it, and you can, you know, and then they can.
Well, there's this tables to teapots, right?
Yeah,
Is a
exactly. Well,
guy
John,
from
yeah,
Acton
John.
who
John
has like a.
Golden.
He lives in Carlisle.
Okay, he lives in Carlisle and he's got a store that's basically used stock.
Right.
And apparently he goes to the swap shed a lot and picks stuff up. So, and then there's home goods recycling. That's another
Yeah, household goods.
household goods
Yeah.
in Acton. So
Yeah.
those are places that you can go. It's kind of like a swap shed and you can dump the stuff off.
They won't take, they're
But they're
fairly
fussy. I mean,
Oh, they're fussy.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
won't.
They can
But
sell, yeah.
But,
you need
Oh, yeah,
somebody
but
to
they-
say,
they
okay,
give
this
them-
is
give
trash
them
and this
but
is not.
still,
And that's what we need.
yeah.
Right, but I
I
mean.
think that's it. It's more
But
like.
if you go to household goods in Acton, they'll do that, right? In other words,
But I want to do it at the transfer station.
okay, well, yeah, you do it at
That's-
the transfer.
Because
convenience.
otherwise I'm driving my car and taking time and driving my car extra miles to go someplace. Because if it's something we wanna go to, right now, the routine is, you know, you pile up the stuff that might be somebody else might be able to use, and I take it all to the transfer station at the same time. It's one trip, boom, it's done. That's a huge convenience for people to give up.
Have you,
Right.
have you looked at, single stream recycling? In other words, is like Watertown did, I think I talked to you a little bit about Watertown about 4 years ago, decided that they provided every household with 2 bins.
Well, that's
Green
the
and
Bill
black,
Wickham model.
Right, green and black, and that was it, and those 2 bins, the lid had to close, and they were picked up once a week, and that was it. If you had more trash, you kept it until the next week to fill up, maybe a pocket or one, or whatever.
Or put it in your neighbor's bin if it was
If
happening.
you could stick it in there, but that's how Watertown has handled this, and they've reduced their trash tremendously in a single stream, so that this green container, you throw in bottles, glass, cardboard, anything in it, and you don't have to worry about doing the sorting that we do now.
But
It'd
that
be
doesn't
in-
address the swap shed issue.
No, well,
I mean,
No, but I mean, it
Yeah.
addresses.
well, that
your
would be
tonnage.
curbside, right?
It's curbside too, so they have a contractor that comes in and picks them up at the curb.
Well,
I'm just wondering
I
if you
did
looked at
some-
that for the cost to see if
Yeah,
the
so
same
I
money
have
we're paying
numbers.
now, we get that, that's a huge benefit to our residents.
Right, well, so curbside pickup in Carlisle, if you call Berry Brothers, it's $44 a month or $500+ a year. Our transfer station, if we divide the 250,000 by the 1,600 people,
1651.
1,651 households that use our transfer station. I haven't done that math, but it's less than that,
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit less.
Right, but if you
So-
do it per municipality, a large, whole town.
Well, even, so if you look at Concord, they have an enterprise fund, so what they charge people makes up the cost of everything to do with their waste. There's no property tax input.
Right.
And it's still quite expensive, and I think it's more than the number. Not significantly more, but it's more
More.
expensive.
Is
So
that
we, because,
Acton or Concord? I think?
Concord,
Acton has an enterprise fund.
so doesn't Concord,
Yeah, right,
and Acton does too.
yeah.
Now, Acton is relatively inexpensive in terms of the dump sticker fee, but I'm conjecturing but they don't provide curbside.
Exactly.
So when you do curbside, you actually have a truck running around. You're essentially doing the part that people here do, which is to drive to the transfer station. Talk about convenience. What's even more convenient is you just dump it in the bin in the garage and wheel it out at the end of your driveway. But you're paying for that
3,000 vehicles go there every week.
to the transfer station.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One truck, like a bus,
No, true, but there's labor involved.
I know.
And all the maintenance on the truck and all that stuff, so.
Well,
Just,
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd like to have a slide, because I think that's gonna come up, curbside,
Sure.
right? And
Yeah,
I'm
we
gonna
have-
have a slide with what it costs in Billerica and in Concord. I got the Concord numbers, they're publicly available, it's on a per household basis. In Billerica, it's in the property taxes, so I went to the accountant on Monday, and he said he would send me the number, and then I would divide by the number of households. I haven't seen the number yet, so I'm gonna have to go back there.
And Rob did a chart of
Right.
smaller communities, so we have a chart with a lot of communities that are doing, to talk about the curbside or the combinations that different communities have.
I think the community's gonna wanna see that as an option, so we need to do something, there's, agreement about that, and, okay, we evaluated curbside, we evaluated this, evaluated that, we came out with keep the transfer station, go with pay for it, girl, that's the answer. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the proposed regulations would be, you have to, you can only get the stickers at the transfer station. The stickers are available until 1/2 hour before the posted closing time. You have to bring in your vehicle registration as proof of residency, and the stickers entitle you to dispose of routine residential refuse, and there'll be fees for miscellaneous items, that list, the refrigerators, microwaves, and that kind of thing. And in certain circumstances, the user may be asked to identify the source of a non-routine item in order to be permitted to dispose of that item. Because anecdotally, I talked to Tom at the transfer station, the guy on Saturdays, the extra guy, and he was saying that he stopped a guy who had no sticker. The police came, they determined that he was from Carlisle, but he would not stipulate that the stuff in his truck actually came from Carlisle, or where it came from. So there is some of this going on. Anecdotally, we don't know how much.
There are also private haulers who don't
Yeah.
necessarily adhere to transfer
Just
station.
taking into account all the.
Yeah, and
Carlisle
then-
resident stuff with stickers, the Carlisle
Correct.
resident has to have a sticker.
But they don't.
Right.
So, and then, I'm proposing that people would be able to use credit cards or checks at the transfer station to buy these vouchers to do the,
Not money, because we don't want people holding up the transfer station, that would be far too
Yeah.
dramatic.
so I think that's, that's the whole thing so far.
So one thing to consider in that is it is somewhat of a change of residency to say that it's your car that has to be registered. Because I believe the state has like a 90-day period between when you move and when you actually have to register your vehicle. And I know when I moved in, I made use of that, right? Like I actually got my dump sticker from the transfer station and said, look, I've got this weird thing because my plate says New Hampshire, but I'm now a resident here. So, and it was much longer than the 90 days because I didn't move right away, right? But I was doing construction on the house. So I don't know if that's going to be a difficulty for, I mean, it's fine for residents that live here, right? But for new residents coming in, not being able to throw anything away because you haven't registered your car yet could be a difficulty.
There's other
Well,
ways you can
but they
prove.
would have that difficulty now.
No, because you all have to prove residency.
No, as soon as
You
you
have to-
land in Massachusetts, you have to get your driving license changed.
Right, that's fine. You can get your driving
So
license
as long as
changed, but
you've got
your
your
car
driving-
registration
yes,
is delayed.
Exactly, so there is some ways they can sort
Right,
of.
so
like-
I'm just saying that a
Well,
strict rule that
the-
says this car has to be registered could be a difficulty
Well,
for new
You have
residents.
to have proof that you live in Carlisle.
Right.
And when I moved here, I went to the police station and I don't remember what I had. I had like an electric bill or something, and
I
that's
think
what
I
it
showed
showed.
my mortgage.
Because my registration and my driver's license were not Carlisle. And they wouldn't be for another
Yeah, because
Right.
if you.
period of time.
For some period of time, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'm just
so I
talking-
think you need to be a little bit flexible on
Yeah.
how you prove residency.
And the other thing is that I think it's a great idea to get the police station out of this because that's a ridiculous use of their time.
Right.
On the other hand, I'm pretty sure they check something because I hand them my registration every year and they go away for a couple minutes and come back.
Right.
And they're looking for something on my registration that the dump people can't do. I don't know what that is, but I will
I'm
find
not-
out.
Priors, all your
Yeah.
priors,
Yeah,
Bob.
See, see if you paid your speeding tickets.
Exactly. Well, there's sneaky places now they can hide, the extra places.
They're doing something.
They're doing something.
And they may like doing it. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the dispatcher was, when I talked to two of them, and they both don't like doing the dump stickers.
Oh.
As far as they're concerned, it's
Good.
it's a waste of their time, and they really don't understand, you know, they don't know anything about it, you know, they're just told to do this and that, the other thing. But along those lines, I set a camera up briefly on 2 Saturdays ago and captured like 30 license plates. I have a motion detection thing, I put the camera in my car facing out of the trunk. And then I manually went through the photos and just wrote down the license numbers. I came up with a list. So I went to talk to the police. Turns out that license plate information is very restricted. There's actually federal laws about, you know, what you're allowed to get. You know, what information, if you present, you're not allowed to go into a government agency and say, here's a license plate number, I want to know something about this.
Right.
Online, you can get the make and model of the car for free, but anything beyond that, you have to pay, and then you sort of have to certify that you're one of these particular situations, 5, you know, special cases. Anyway, because I tried to go to the assessor and say, hey, give me the excise tax license plates, you know, so I can compare it to this list. So I finally talked to Lieutenant Crow, and he said, okay, what we'll do is you give me your lists, and in off-peak hours I'll have the dispatchers go through the list and match it to the list that we've sold dump stickers to. And then we'll mark all the ones that have dump stickers, then we'll take the ones that don't have any marking and put them through our CD-ROM and determine whether they're in Carlisle or out of Carlisle. And I'll give you back 3 numbers: in Carlisle, no dump sticker; out of Carlisle, obviously no dump sticker; and in Carlisle with dump sticker. You get a percentage. And so I'm asking Tim to present this to the Board of Selectmen to get approval. Well, then I went to Gary and said, can I mount the camera? He said, not over. No, if I won't approve that, you have to go over my head. So I did. I went to Tim, and Tim said, Board of Selectmen. So I want to have that in front of the Board of Selectmen, do a month-long study, and then put to bed this issue of how do we have this sort of leakage.
It's really important.
So it's gonna have to be a month-wide study that's not reported in the mosquito.
True.
No, because the people outside that are using the dump probably don't read the mosquito.
Right.
So-
But I think
But it may
that's
be a
one of the
combination,
worst,
you know, where
one of the worst characteristics or features of what we've got now is there's a lot of suspicion about all those people from out of town, and it comes up all
And then
the
if it
time.
comes up,
And
no,
we
it's
don't
actually all of
know.
us,
Yeah.
Well, that would be very
then
telling.
we put it to bed, the whole question.
Right.
I
Well,
think
I
it's
mean-
important to figure out why our trash is where it is.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear, I mean, I support getting our trash down any way we can, I mean, I do. But I have to say, you know, maybe of all the bad solutions, paper throw is the right bad solution for us. But it's something, what bothers me personally about it is I know that it's going to increase what our house throws out by every bag that we use, because that's one more plastic bag that I would not be throwing out than
So
I'm
how do
now
you throw
throwing
out your
out.
trash at the moment?
I just throw it in a barrel, a plastic barrel, and it's in small little shopping bags that the little tiny ones that we get at the grocery store, and that's in what we use inside, and those go into another bag. So I'm not putting a 33-gallon bag in under a kitchen sink. So I'm still using a small
So still using
store
some
bag.
sort of plastic bag, yeah.
And maybe we could be better about that and just throw the trash directly into the
So
barrel.
that's what I thought you were doing, but yeah.
But now I'm throwing a bag in a bag. So I'm throwing out more trash, and we don't throw anything in the trash that even if you charge us $100 a trip to the dump, we're still gonna put the same stuff in that we have to throw out.
Because
You know,
you
we're
recycle.
composting,
You
we're
compost?
recycling everything, that we are allowed to. And there's also a lot of stuff, frankly, in my opinion, the transfer station is poorly set up. And people make honest mistakes all the time because stuff is not clearly labeled. I watched a guy empty a 33-gallon trash barrel into the cardboard recycle bin. And I said, that's the recycle bin, a cardboard recycle. He goes, oh, you know, he swore it was an accident. The guy didn't mean to do it. 33 gallons of trash went in there because it's not labeled that well. And I said, oh, it's labeled. Well, it has to have a banner on it. And that's true in a number of places. It's not ergonomically set up, so everyone goes there and spends all kinds of time running around to different bins. And so there's a lot of things we could improve just with that kind of stuff, just
Sure.
make it ergonomically better.
Signage.
And I'm having trouble, you just said, we're the last place left that doesn't do this, everybody else is. So this option to get our trash down of taking it to somebody else's transfer station doesn't exist for us. So to the extent that that's helping these other towns reduce their trash load by 40 or 50%, that option's not available to us. I'm where Jonathan is. What are people throwing out, and would they really stop throwing it out for $3 a bag?
Can I just mention one thing? Those numbers around recycling. So 37th, in the town, whatever our actual tonnage is. In fact, there are some communities that reduce, they have like a 90% rate of diversion out of their solid waste. And then there are some that have like a 5% rate of diversion. So the average is somewhere in between. I mean, most communities are in that, obviously it's an average, in that 30 or 40%. And you talk about you and Bill, I know you do the composting too, and probably everyone in this room is pretty serious about this. But I think there are exceptions, and there are some people, I've been there and I've seen, what some people throw in the trash that should be elsewhere. So I think all of us have had experiences like that, right? And the heavy items too. But I think regardless, we've got to sort of pay attention to this, and I think we've got to squelch the notion or confirm the notion that it's all these other people from out of town, and this is one way, to get at that.
Well, it could be, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that worries me a bit is, I do think that recycling will increase, and trash disposal in the trash hopper will decrease. I worry about improper recycling. It's hard enough right now to figure out. I mean, we're very careful about recycling, but is this paper clean enough to recycle?
Right.
There's all of
They're hard earth, this is a composite material.
Right.
Well,
So
where do I put it? Is it aluminium or is it cardboard or?
Yeah, exactly.
Aluminum,
So
sorry.
I hear your
Yeah.
point, and
Yeah.
I just want to be clear here. Recycling, I am convinced, as a member of the recycling committee, which I felt for a long time was misnamed, that recycling is not the answer. And if you
It's
look
not,
at these
no.
towns that really reduce their solid waste, you don't see that much of a significant jump in their recycling. So it's other stuff that's going on with those communities. And I think, this is about data, this is about presenting the information we've been able to find, and then trying to dig into what could it be that causes X, Y, or Z. So recycling is not going to solve the problem.
Has anyone just sat there and watched, like, for a few hours what people actually do at the bins? Have you done that, or?
I haven't sat there for 2 hours, but I know when I've gone, I've kind of observed that I have.
I mean, I'm just
that's why we
curious,
need
right, if
I think
there's
that's why we
anecdotal
need cameras,
information.
because it's just data collection. It's not done. It's not being. We don't need to do it to say, oh, we're trying to find people in fault. We're just trying to find out what people do.
What's going on?
And the easiest way to do that, especially in the winter months, is by cameras. And it's the easiest way of
So-
doing it. And
Well, except if it's in a plastic bag, you don't really know what's in it.
Yeah.
I mean, are people throwing their yard waste in the bins? I'm back to this, how do people cut their
Yeah.
trash in half?
Well,
I just don't
it's-
think-
in Japan, the
organics.
neighbors used to go through your trash. You had to throw out different things, and this was in 2000. Different things on every single day. There was a trash collection every single day. There was different items, and if you threw out the wrong thing on a different day, your trash would come back to your front door.
Okay, we don't have that culture.
Yeah,
here.
but I'm just saying is that's how, and that was 2000. That's not.
So composting, getting food waste out of the solid waste trash is 25 to 30% right there. if you can do that. Now, not all those communities do pay as you throw, but Acton does, and if we can do that, that would help substantially. So,
Yeah,
well, we
I
have
mean, I
to
think in the
move
end-
on here, but
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, in the end, this experiment has been done many, many times. You know, there's 155 communities, I believe, in Massachusetts that do pay as you throw. And, it's been successful across the board. So, you know, I don't know that we have to know exactly why it's successful in each one of those cases, and I don't think we have to somehow vet that it's going to be successful in our community, even though, you know,
Yeah,
this
I
evidence.
hear you, but on the
Because
flip
it-
side is, if people are just throwing their stuff out somewhere else, it isn't solving anything. If that's what people are doing.
Right, but
If
if you
they're
look,
taking it to
if,
work, it hasn't solved anything.
right, but if, since Massachusetts has gotten a 30% reduction in solid waste, and when they measure that, they measure the export material that goes out of state as well as what comes into state.
Yeah.
And-
It's not,
and
it's
so-
not just that we don't know, it's counterintuitive that it works. That's the thing I'm tripping over for me. It's counterintuitive.
Well, what I'm saying is that the evidence is that it does work. So even though, I mean, it's like
Fair
quantum
enough.
mechanics is counterintuitive, but it's been proven that it works.
Okay,
You know,
Alright.
can I just ask the final question? What, you know, the one thing we haven't discussed this is how it impacts the Energy Task Force.
That's
Which
a
is
good point.
one of the reasons that we tried to take over trash 2 years ago.
and look what you've done.
Yeah, well, we've been successful in getting it moved from Westboro to Billerica, I believe, all that data. So, but how much will this save, and it's not in your slide, but how much does this save to,
oh,
in time? If we went a third, so we got 30% reduction in solid, in food waste, so that would be a
Well-
30% reduction presumably in our tonnage and our travel time, and then you said that some people achieve 50%, so it's 50% of our tonnage.
yeah, so the 44% number is the average of, you know,
So
All
a
the different-
44% reduction.
I think we can get more than that just because we're so high. I mean, if we were lower, if we weren't fifth, I would say, well, maybe not, but being at the top end, I think
So
we could get.
fifth, I forgot, I know I gave you the numbers, which is a bit embarrassing, 'cause I'm sitting there
So
like,
in terms of
I
fuel,
can't remember what I gave you.
I have a spreadsheet here, let me see what
I gave you the numbers of last
So
month, I think.
there's a model that the state has here, and, you know, this, if we do a 44% reduction, then we save $134,000 annually. And,
But how many trips is that to, how many,
Like
and
you're
this
talking
solid
about
waste
emissions.
trips?
the solid waste, so
Energy.
here are the transport costs. This is your spreadsheet right here. No, wait a minute, sorry, trips. Here's the trips spreadsheet, right?
Right.
This is the one that you made up.
Right.
So presumably we're here on the bottom, which is when we're recycling in Billerica. So trash, we have 234 trips, so you reduce that in half or 44%. And you can, you know, look at the miles and fuel usage impact.
So you're telling me I have to go back to my own spreadsheet and work it out?
Well, yeah, I mean, I have this data all flowing in.
Yeah, I understand,
It all
I
flows in,
understand,
I don't,
understand.
you know.
Yeah.
So your dollar number here, are you interested in dollars or
We
gallons?
want
No,
gallons
we're
or therms?
MMBTU.
Oh, BTUs.
Okay, well,
MMBTU,
in
which
terms
is
of
that-
gallons,
Yeah,
this
but I
is
gave you the calculation below.
1,600 gallons divided in half, so 800 gallons annually of fuel, right?
You mean 8,000?
For trash, this spreadsheet here says 1,600
No, the
gallons.
thing is, it's not,
But you divide it two,
Yeah, 800,
it says
Okay.
800.
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not,
1,600.
Westboro was by far much more because it was going that extra 20 miles, and there were many more trips to Westboro. So
Okay, well,
it
let's-
was, that's where the dramatic loss came. So I do need to
So
run.
Billerica runs maybe, you know, there's gonna be the compactor is going to reduce, the mixed plastic here is the highest, well, actually wood here, but that goes to Devon. So if we look at mixed plastic, you know, we could cut that in half, but there may be some additional recycling that gets done. we really don't know, but Carlisle likes to think that there's a lot of recycling that goes on here, so maybe the recycling rate wouldn't really go up all that much. So a lot of this is really hard to say. We can look at averages, but to say specifically what's gonna happen here. But some of these things are gonna cancel out, you know. So in aggregate, I think we're safe to assume a 44 or 50% thing, but,
One more suggestion.
Sorry, I've got access to my computer.
I would be tickled to see an invasive species disposal bin at the transfer station.
well, you know, I don't know, if the compost
definitely
dump,
goes
the
to
black or
Some
incinerator?
transfer stations do that.
Mm.
I don't know what they do with them.
We should get Jonathan Bakewell on this, he's big on the invasive
Oh yeah, he's really big on
species.
I
invasive.
mean, it's probably too late,
Yeah.
frankly, but I mean, it's just one of those things, I can't help myself. And then what do you do with this stuff? They say, well, put it in plastic bags and let it sit out in your yard for 2 months. You gotta have a place to put it.
It's gotta be sunny, I think, too.
It's gotta be sunny and you're using all those extra plastic bags and a lot of
Which are
this
then
stuff-
degenerating into the
hundreds of plastic bags to do any meaningful amount. I mean, it's this stuff we know. I mean, some of the stuff is like this, bittersweet, right? You're not gonna put it in plastic bags. That's a suggestion, if it's feasible. The thing is, like, what I'm trying to say is, it's not just pay for growth, it's a whole revamp of what we're doing, and I really honestly think about the ergonomics of the setup, because you're doing enough changes to the transfer station for all this stuff, you might as well get it right. And you got it mostly right, I think, except for now we still have glass over here, we still have the paper over there, we still have a lot of running around. I'm not convinced I'm gonna save any time when I go to the transfer station based on the diagram.
Right, well,
I'm not sure it's possible to come up with a configuration that will save time.
Well, I
It
think
might be.
what I'm shooting for here is sort of the minimal change that will get pay-as-you-throw implemented. And if we put the solar canopy on the transfer station, then presumably everything is gonna get rearranged, right? Because you're gonna be digging it up, you're gonna
That's
be
an
trenching.
opportunity.
At that time, I think, then you can say, okay, let's figure out, the guard shack is a prefab building that can be moved, you know, so I'm saying, let's put it in place. Let's not, because if we try to solve all the problems all at once, we'll never make any progress. My feeling is, let's get this, it won't be any worse, I believe, because we're actually gonna have one stop for plastic, tin, and aluminum, so that's gonna free up.
Yeah, as
you
long
know-
as everything's reconfigurable, that's fine. And
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
part of the plan
we're not
to do
talking
that.
about any huge construction project here, just maybe a little bit of a foundation.
I guess where the compactors are, that's pretty much fixed, they have to stay there, everything
Well,
else
not
is-
without spending a lot of money to move them around, right, so I'm saying, let's just, you know, I wanna get this done, I don't wanna like tie it all up, you know, into this, because you add so many things, interdependent things into the project, it'll never get
Does
done.
this have to be voted on at town meeting, how's this work?
Well, I was thinking, you know, initially I thought, well, maybe we should do a town meeting kind of thing, but then the other approach is
Well,
to
what,
do,
what's, does it have to go to town
I
meeting?
don't
The
believe
Board
it
of
does.
Selectmen have the authority, and I think,
They do.
Bill, you know this, to okay this, approve this plan.
Okay.
I think the concern would be that anything this dramatic, and this would be seen, even though we're trying to do the minimal thing, it's still, you know, it's a
I think
change.
the board's gonna ask.
I suspect after all the trouble they've gotten in, with the deer, hunt, they, and the complaints, I've been at a number of the meetings when people have been saying, you're not autocrats, you made this change without, bringing it to town meeting, and this is immoral. And I think we would get they would get some real pushback if it were done without a
Yeah, I
town
think it has to
meeting
go to,
vote.
eventually it has to go to the town meeting.
He's got to go to town meeting.
Okay, I managed to come up with a calculation, we would save 116 MMBTU per annum. That's all, because the bigger one was a Westford Billericay,
Right.
which is the one we knew we were gonna get, which was about the 200 and something.
Okay, any
So that is it.
other, comments or questions for Lon and Claude?
And you can reach
You're a
us
quiet
by
list, Sue.
email.
Did you,
Um,
taking it on that?
Can you
Well,
share
one
this
thing I
Yeah,
noticed
yeah.
now,
with
send
me
you-
so I can add it to
the
the
online purchase, the cardboard and packaging material, they're going to increase like 4 or 5 times, I see them, and that's gonna increase more and
Well,
more.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, I will say that I think it would be convenient for us to be able to recycle plastic bags at the transfer station, not just at the various stores
Well,
that we have
it's
to go
not
to.
only that, it's all
Because
the types of film and all the
Well, yeah,
stuff.
I mean, the
Yeah.
airbags that come from Amazon and whatnot
Yeah.
are all stuff that, right now, it's a royal pain to get rid of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if there was some way to recycle that locally,
So
that
you have
would
a
be
little
good.
box there and a big box, and there are 4 plastic,
Right.
airbags.
We're gonna follow though
Yeah.
through recycling, because
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff that we think we're recycling isn't being recycled.
Oh,
Due
yeah,
to
that's
the
true.
economy and due to the cost.
Well, that's
Okay.
out of our control, but at least if we separate it out, we have a chance of doing
Sure,
something.
sure.
Anything should change.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Are they recycling is not?
By the way,
You can't,
I'm happy to talk offline if I can expound further on anything I brought up, so. let me know.
I haven't recorded most of this, I've just recorded the fact that we had this discussion about where it was concerned, and that there is that issue about how the disruptive economies are going to change the way we have, or change the type of trash we have. So I think that, I don't know, that's being included into the,
Are we still making money on cardboard?
yes,
Yes, cardboard's the,
that could change in a year,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
But so far, that's a good,
Revenue.
that's a good stock, it's a decent revenue.
well, you know, we're always going to have food. So we're always going to have food waste, so getting rid of food waste would be a big thing.
Yeah, it'd be enormous if we did it.
Especially when, I don't know what my husband did to our composter, not composter.
Well, I don't know, Claude, are you staying or going? Is Claude,
He's staying,
he's staying, okay,
we
so
do
I'm
other
gonna,
stuff.
you gave us a lot more time than I expected, and I
Well, I
wanna
think
thank you all.
You're welcome.
I mean,
And you are
it's-
welcome to stay. We're gonna talk about something that might be interesting to you.
I'm interested in everything that goes on in this room. But I'm going home now.
Thank
but
you for
Well,
what you're doing.
Well,
Okay. Well, so the good news is, that's not good news, but there's some things we won't get to today because they're Clark is not here. In terms of the next agenda item, mission statement, I'm gonna switch this with the 7:35 item on update on long-term goals, because I think this will probably answer some of the questions that come up about the mission statement, or may. So, as many of you know, we formed a small subcommittee to work on proposing goals for the town of Carlisle related to our greenhouse gas emissions. And I know I feel badly, I've been a little bit probably brief in updates to the task force, and I wanted to get more on paper before we gave you an update. But the good news is we have it now, and I say we, it's pretty much Debbie and me who've been doing this. So this is a draft, and I'll send this around to everybody. I wanted to take people through it and give a little preamble, so I didn't send it out yet, but I will send it to everybody. Presumably, this would be something we would eventually, once we were happy with it, would be presented to this Board of Selectmen. So that's why it says presentation to the Board of Selectmen on here. But that's not been scheduled. That won't be scheduled until we're happy with it. The other thing I want to mention is that we know we represent a range of viewpoints in this task force, and I actually think that's not a bad thing. And certainly in the area about whether that we should be using financial resources to try to promote environmental improvements, we have different views, and that's a good thing. What I want to make sure we do, what I'm going to suggest we do as a committee, is that we think about what is right for the town here. And what I'm suggesting is we think about, I'm suggesting this decisions about goals should be made by the community, not by the task force, okay? So whether we personally, when we're done with this, whether we personally, each of us thinks goals are a good idea or not. I'm suggesting that environmental goals are something that the community should decide on, not me. It's not for me to decide. I'll do the work to put something together, but not for me to decide. So I hope everyone thinks about that, and in terms of how we react to this, it is more, it's not, am I personally for or against it, is do I think the community should have a vote on this? And is this the right set of choices to put in front of the community to vote on? Okay, long preamble, but I wanted to get that out. So, I just said this, we're had this subcommittee set up. It's been primarily Debbie and me. Really, the goal is to propose goals and a conceptual pathway, not to say, to dictate goals, and to work with the planning board and the master plan steering committee. And that's a very important thing, I think. This really should get rolled into that process and vetted along with the master plan, the rest of the master plan ideas. I actually talked to Wayne Davis about whether we should have a warrant article in April in our town meeting, just as more of a referendum. Are people interested in this or are they not? Wouldn't be any money associated with that particular vote. And Wayne talked us out of it and said, it's probably not the best use of time if people need to have time to get exposed to this before the town meeting. And plus, even if you do something like this, by the time you have another vote in a year, things will have changed and people will say, wait a minute, that's not what we agreed to and all. And just there was a number of reasons we came back to the pathway of trying to tie it in with a master plan. And hopefully we'll be able to do that. The benefits may be apparent. It's going to help us lower energy costs and lower environmental footprints. Comfort improvement is a big deal. This goes hand in hand with a lot of improvements we could make. Arguably, morale and cohesiveness, maybe that's a stretch. And certainly,
I think it depends how you do it.
Depends how you do it. You could actually destroy
I
if we do it wrong. It's certainly a healthier plan is part of it. So, very crude numbers, but this is the first time I think any of us have looked at, what is Carlisle's carbon footprint? And I'd welcome offline anyone who'd like to help refine this or review it, whatnot. But if we look at the pie chart on the left, came out with 96% of our carbon emissions are associated with residences. Now this is not including embedded carbon emissions or indirect emissions associated with products we buy and things, not counting airplanes, but it's what we use at home and what we use in our vehicles.
Food? The energy involved in making the food we eat?
No, it's not included.
Or the transport of the
embedded carbon is very
from the
difficult,
grocery store.
Right, that's all embedded carbon, it's not included.
so difficult.
So these, if you were to, this is electricity and fuels, essentially.
This is a simple carbon.
It's basically fuels. Right.
Do you have that in kilowatts per, or in kilowatts?
This is metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. You can convert it to anything you want.
Okay, and metric ton is
It's a 10% larger than a
2,200
short ton.
pounds.
It's 2,200 pounds roughly.
It's
now
how everybody is doing it now, so we have to go to MTs. In fact, even Massachusetts.
Well, it's been like this for many years, but this is standard units for carbon emissions. Now the municipal number, because of the MEI, we've got a pretty good handle on it. The commercial number, that may go up a bit. It's a quick hack based on some of our bigger buildings. That includes churches and organizations and things like that. But it doesn't include firms, for example. They have to be totally complete. So, just looking at the residential piece, again, there's improvements that could be made in the arithmetic here, probably in the assumptions, but Electricity is about 20%. Now, this is 2017, this is pre-aggregation, okay? This is just based on, you know, the New England pool electricity, what are the emissions per kilowatt hour. Natural gas, propane, fuel oil, just split those up based on, there's actually the US Census Bureau published those numbers on how many households in Carlisle have these various fuels. Now, I have no idea if these numbers are accurate, but that's what I use. Okay, actually, I think they're not too bad. The gasoline is, that could probably use some improvement. It's not Carlisle specific, it's based on Massachusetts average numbers, and assumptions I made about the fleet of vehicles we have in the town. So there's, probably that could be fine too. All right.
No wood burning
Probably
in
even
there?
a higher percentage,
Pardon
given the distance that people in Carlisle commute, and the fact that we have no public transportation whatsoever.
Certainly is compared to an urban
Yeah.
dwelling person.
And it actually reflects almost exactly with what Berkeley University have for our transportation. It's just over 40%, so.
And the reason I'm putting, by the way, most people don't lump transportation in with residential. The reason I'm doing it is I think it's absolutely relevant.
Mhm.
We have to look at our whole footprint. We're already cutting out all this embedded carbon and other things.
Any way to get the wood burners in town? Can they carve it in wood?
I think it'll be so small.
I think it'd be small, but I made the assumption that, they're not in there. And it's very complicated, as we learned when we looked at the pellet boiler thing for Heat Smart. It's like, you can come up with any answer you want based on the assumptions you make, or whether it's carbon neutral or it's not. I don't think it's carbon neutral personally.
But in the UK,
but
it's
it's
considered
not
carbon neutral, so.
In all of Europe, yeah.
Because there's a lot of pellets on
And it really depends on what would have happened to that wood had you not burned it, and who knows what that.
I think there's so few numbers anyway, it doesn't really affect the pie chart.
I don't think it will. That's the least of our concerns. So what's the trend? Again, a lot of sticky assumptions to go back to 1990, but I wanted to look at 1990 because that's the baseline year for the Global Warming Solutions Act, which is one option for our using for Carlisle goals. And as it turns out, we've had about a 16% increase in emissions based on the assumptions I made to get back to that date. And that just coincidentally happens to correspond to our population increase of 16%.
Makes sense.
But obviously that's not what the calculation was, but it just, things came out in the wash. So, and again, if you look at this per capita, this 7 metric tons per year, that's not including a lot of other things. And I know the number, a US average number per capita, including all sources, is more like 15 to 20 tons per capita. So we know there's a lot of stuff, industrial stuff, air travel, and who knows what else is not included. All the stuff we buy, all the energy went into stuff we buy.
Is it possible to run that as an average Massachusetts household number per capita for those 2 years?
Yeah, I didn't do that, but I didn't show it here. But I think just in terms of emissions and the stuff that we are counting here, we're something like 40% above the per capita emissions of Massachusetts average household. And so one important number, and this I think tells a lot, the average house size in Carlisle is 3,500 square feet. The state average is about 2,100 square feet, a ratio of 1.7. Okay, and it's not because we're putting in 10 people per house. That we've got we've got 2.9 people per house. So I'm not sure what the Massachusetts average is, but it's not much different than that. We, on average, are obviously taking up a lot of space here.
We're using more planets than we have.
Okay. I'm not making a value judgment, just pointing that out. So, that's a lot to digest, but again, I'll send this around, happy to answer questions, and again, if anyone likes to look at spreadsheets or anyone has ideas for sources, I desperately love to get review. So, we've outlined 3 options here. Option 3, which is a viable option, is we don't set goals, quantified goals, okay? That's on the table. Option 1 is to align with the Global Warming Solutions Act of 2008. A lot of towns have done that, sort of. They didn't necessarily use the same base year. But if we used a 1990 base year, that would correspond to a goal of a 6% annual reduction on average.
From now, from today.
From today.
Right,
Until
Well,
20
from 2020 on.
right.
Until 2050, and then it stops.
Through 2050, right. And the interim goal I show at the bottom is just sort of assuming we do that 6% reduction per year. That's where we would be in 2030. We'd be at 40% reduction. The second option, the latest science and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change put out a report this year that suggests, actually we need to limit warming to more like 1.5 C, and by the way, that means we need to get down to virtually carbon neutral by 2050. So that's the latest science. And I said 95% here because someone's going to quibble about 100%, saying you can never get 100%. So that's the reason they changed it to 95% by 2050. But it's roughly in line with what that IPCC report suggests is needed. And that's more like a 10% reduction per year. Quite a bit different. I think, as I've said before, setting anything less than the GWSA just seems kind of silly. Sort of making a public statement that we don't think the state is doing the right thing and we're going to not support it. I don't know why we do that, personally.
Those goals are town-wide too, right?
Yes, that's very important. That footnote
It would be
clarifies
town-wide.
that
You have to say
town-wide,
it's
this is
town-wide.
everything. And we've been working on that, the few percent on the municipal side, and even if these numbers are off, it's still at least 90% residential. At least 90% residential.
The worrisome thing is that over that period, people have become more conscious of energy costs. People have built homes that are more energy efficient. A lot of people with older homes have done the best they can to make their houses more energy efficient. And yet, if you looked at the slide that we just were looking at, we didn't achieve 1 single % over 10 years.
It's
So
actually,
it's
it's
a little
since
more-
1990.
So it's a lovely goal.
So it's actually
but-
worth 30 years, 1990,
Well,
Yeah,
20 years,
18 years.
18, no,
Yeah.
No,
1990.
28
Okay,
years, sorry.
yeah.
years.
28 years, right.
yeah, okay.
No, I think we've just all become, we're all just using more, that's the problem, we've sort of,
Yeah.
it's snuck up behind us, we
Yeah.
think we're doing better, but we're not.
Well, no, we certainly aren't.
You know, I think
and
that's the
we're
thing.
trying.
We think we're trying, we're not,
and-
we have to realize we're not trying hard enough.
Well,
Yeah,
we definitely have bigger homes than we had 30 years ago,
Yeah, well, yeah, there are bigger homes on average in town. I mean, certainly we don't have a
Let's say
bigger
we.
home than we had
We
30
collectively
years
do.
It's very interesting, it's very
Yeah.
interesting when you go and look at universities, because
Yeah.
of course, we're looking at these dorms, and we
Oh,
look at what
oh,
and we just go, what, you
Oh.
had that, you know?
oh, yeah.
I mean, and then that just shows you very in that space of time, because 30 years didn't have, 28 years ago I didn't have a kid, that it's very clear how much more we just expect, or the,
Yeah.
The other thing is, we've got very little multifamily housing.
Oh,
And that's huge.
Yeah.
You put people in buildings, you use a lot less
Use a
energy.
lot more
It's-
energy, yeah.
Yeah.
Single family home
it's a
uses a
lot,
lot
you
more
know.
energy.
My wife and I made the lifestyle decision to live here in a single family home. That was
Yeah.
more me, I have to admit.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's a real
Oh,
reality.
it is.
And you
Yeah.
pointed out earlier, I don't even account for the fact that we're driving more
Yeah.
than others. All right. So those seem like the three logical ways we could go if we are to set goals. I'll try to go through this quickly because I think we've all talked about this before one time or the other. But really, the strategy is, obviously you try to improve energy efficiency wherever you can. You try to electrify, switch from fossil fuels to electricity, and you try to switch your source of electricity to renewable sources. And you don't necessarily do things in that order, but those are the three things you do. And there's a few other things, obviously, on the fringe you can do. But those are that sort of covers it. And now, yes, we have gone to a renewable electricity supply, but what we don't know is how inexpensive that will be over time. We don't know what the price differential will be. Right now, it's very little. Some would argue that what we're doing now is not that valuable because we're buying national renewable energy certificates as opposed to New England renewable energy certificates. And we won't get into that discussion tonight. That's a discussion that needs to be had so that we understand what the difference is and why it matters or doesn't. One other thing too is with these renewable energy certificates is I'm convinced there's a lot of double counting. The people who produce the renewable energy claim it, and then they sell their RECs to other people who then have bought the right to claim it. So it gets double counted. So those are some of the subtleties. It's not quite as simple as just, we just switch over and we pay the 10% per kilowatt hour and we're done. It's going to get more complicated, I'm convinced, over time. This is a busy slide, but in terms of what we can do at the municipal level, I think this is where a lot of the action needs to happen. The key thing is sustainability just has to be part of the mindset, and decisions get made in the community. The voters have to be behind it and tell town hall that this is how you are to make decisions, by the way, because we say so. And that has to be factored. That has to any big decisions, planning that's done, has to factor in environmental impacts for this to really work. Obviously, we can improve, I say enhance community choice aggregation. I just alluded to the fact there's maybe different things we could do with the renewable energy certificates or sources. Obviously, municipal solar projects. We could require new homes and new buildings to be either net zero energy, for example, or what I'm using a term called zero energy ready, which is a Department of Energy term, which says it's basically a net zero home, we just haven't put the solar panels on top. But it's ready for solar panels if you want to put them
So
on.
it means that the developer has to actually orientate the house so solar panels can go on it, as opposed to just throwing some subdivision and putting cookie cutter houses on it, and so some of the roofs are not placed in the right direction. You know, it means to have to think about what you're doing.
But there's a lot more to it than that too, right? There's also the trees, there's the insulation,
Absolutely.
there's
No,
the...
absolutely. Well, that's why we've already said that zero energy buildings, but this it's more than just creating a zero energy building. You've actually
So Massachusetts had the stuff that we used to put ourselves in green communities, right? That required more insulation.
the stretch code.
Yeah, the stretch code. That's what it is. Do they have a beyond stretch code? Anything that we
It's
can
being
use
talked
as a template?
about right now
Okay.
at
In
a
fact,
state
there is
level.
a webinar, I have to remember sending it around, I forget who's putting it on, there's a webinar like January 16 or 17 to learn about what you can do to influence Massachusetts building codes.
Right.
I'll send the link around.
It was up for they had the opening sort of discussion presentation to the state. I want to see around November. time.
Most
It was a
of-
really busy time, it was just like, it was
Most
a
of
work.
the stretch code now is in the building code.
Yeah,
It's, I mean,
and
You've
what
got to incorporate
what I'm
the-
finding is people are asking to go beyond.
Right.
They're asking not only to go from beyond, but they're also asking for much higher, like wind, tornado, they're much more
Loading.
concerned about wind, events.
Wind loading and.
Wind loading, so they're asking
snow
for
loading and-
additional structures, so that their buildings can withstand tornadoes, not necessarily tornadoes, but.
Yeah, again, keep in mind, I've got a question mark on all of these things, because these are important policy things that could have serious consequences, negative consequences. They're not necessarily things we would do, but they're examples of things we might look at. I mean, talk about a moratorium on natural gas expansion. Well, that's a serious step. And I think roughly 40% of our homes have access to natural gas now, or use natural gas in the home. Quite frankly, right now, that is the cheapest way to heat your home. And so to voluntarily say, no, we're not gonna expand that network, even though it could save people money and their energy bill, that would be a big decision. But the idea would be, well, if the solution is to switch to electricity, then why would we encourage more natural gas?
It's
So-
better than oil though.
It's much better than oil, but it's not gonna get us to the goal.
That's true.
It's not gonna get us to the goal.
That's true.
And I keep worrying when, as people who are trying to reduce carbon footprint, we talk about more electricity, as if we were getting really even half of our electricity from renewable sources. The truth is, one way or another, most of our electricity, I haven't seen recent statistics, but I'm betting it's at least 70 and probably 80% of our electricity comes from fossil fuels.
Natural gas.
And that's a heck of a stupid way to heat your house. You're losing 80% of your energy, your heat, you're putting it into the environment in order to generate the electricity in the first place.
Well, it's
And
better
then,
than that. It's better than that, but
But not much. Even with
It's,
the best,
it's about 40% efficiency in New England to get the electricity to your home.
okay.
But
To
the
get
other,
the electric.
there's 60% losses between the power plant and your home.
Okay, but to what I'm talking about, the power on top of that, at the power plant, don't forget the cargo center.
No, that's, I'm including
You're
that.
including that.
I shouldn't say between the power plant, I'm saying including the power plant.
Plant.
From the fuel entering the
Okay,
power plant to your home.
because typically there's not that
Yeah.
much loss in transmission of electricity,
Yeah, it's
you're
about-
right, but,
6 or 7%.
yeah.
But how about this, are you convinced that our switch, our community aggregation hasn't helped? In theory, we're buying renewable energy certificates, we are buying renewable energy certificates to cover 100% of electricity unless people opted out of the program.
Yeah, and you've already talked about double counting, I'm wondering about that.
So, yeah, no, what
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
asking, I don't have the answers.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm concerned about the accounting. It sounds easy on the surface, say, oh, we just switch to electricity, buy renewable energy,
Yeah.
and then we're done.
Yeah,
And
we're not generating
not
the
that simple.
power,
It's not
power
that
we're
simple.
using
Exactly.
from renewable sources in general.
I think
as a
that
nation.
the idea of going to the community aggregation means that we've made a big step in the right
Oh, yeah.
direction. And I think we all know that we want to get away closer to New England and closer to home, right into Carlisle, to be knowing that we're generating that electricity in
I
Carlisle.
don't know.
And that's,
I don't know.
that could be, but that's something that, again, we don't know how things are going to change
That's true, but.
Yeah.
It's so much that the idea is that these are the sort of things that we're talking about. You know, we've got to make our buildings more sustainable. You can't just say, let's have an uninsulated house and we'll have it heated by renewable energy and we'll all be
Well,
hunky dory.
exactly. I mean, that's,
We know that doesn't work, so we've got to
That's-
add,
yeah.
there's got to be a sort of mix of all these right things, and how much you put into a mix will depend on many things that we cannot control.
and it's hard to, I'd be the first to admit, it's hard to do. I mean,
Yeah,
I got a quote for insulating my home, and it was over $17,000, and it was a 35-year payback, and I said no.
yeah.
And it's not what people say, oh, it'll cost a couple $1,000 to insulate your home. Not my home,
Yeah,
and not in Carlisle. It's insulated, but not well.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously, we don't need to read through all of this, but there's a lot of, I won't say crazy things on here, but there are certainly
Sort
things
of
that
slightly out of the
would
box,
be
thinking
out of the
like,
box.
do we talk about having a carbon tax? How do we
yeah,
appropriate?
I don't even know if we could legally
Yeah.
do it.
And these
We
are just,
probably can't,
Right.
these are just
Yeah.
talking
But
about,
it would be way better if the state could have figured that out,
Exactly.
but it doesn't seem like that happened. But these things have to be on the table. We have to, I think we probably all understand this, but this is not easy to do. And we've spent the last 30 years not doing it. And I don't mean just Carlisle, I mean the whole world has spent the last 30 years not doing it. So that's where we are. If you believe in the science, that's where we are. So, basically, this is an idea I got from a builder developer, actually. I should say he's his specialty is renovating homes.
it's a bit of a maverick.
What do you call the guy? Paul Eldercap.
Yeah, he's a maverick. Come on, he's a maverick. He's sometimes.
But he
He's not a
gave
good maverick, not a bad
He gave a
maverick.
talk in Lexington a couple of years ago, and he said, I've done a lot of home energy retrofits, deep energy retrofits to existing homes. And my God, when I look at the amount we spent per dollar of carbon saved, it was enormous. I mean, people talk about a price on carbon of $40 a ton. He was talking numbers, $300 or $400 a ton of carbon saved. And oh, by the way, when you look at the embedded carbon and all this material we just put into this home,
Oh, yeah.
it's going to be years before it even starts saving anything. And so it's very difficult, it's challenging, but he did say, look, maybe what we need is just to have an energy plan for every home in a community. And the plan, the owner of the home does what he or she can and is able to do and willing to do. But when ownership transfers, that plan goes to the new owners and say, well, we did A, B, and C, but we didn't do X, Y, and Z, and maybe the next owner does things. But there's at least a rational plan so that, put together with the help of a good energy audit and some expertise, it would cost some money to do this kind of a plan. And that's something we'd have to figure out how to
Maybe
compensate
there's a challenge there. We have a home energy plan challenge, like we have a solar, and so people actually have a challenge and they sign it up, but it means that we can actually get a firm in that can do it and get it done and manage to complete it for less cost.
Yeah.
And it's done as part of the community building. I mean, this.
So, we haven't even talked about the, obviously we need to buy electric vehicles, and that means we probably have to put charging stations into our homes and our garages.
No, not the library.
Not at the library, or wherever we're gonna have a charging
But,
station.
yeah, I mean, what we're thinking of, there is different generations because of the different houses have been built to different building codes, so they need to reflect. The
Right,
plan
I'm
needs
sorry,
to
that-
reflect the different vintages, because anything built
yeah.
before 1975 didn't need insulation.
So Debbie was correctly suggested, let's have some generic plans that are sort of associated with various vintages of housing, and then those plans could be customized to each home. That kind of thing. Well, let's not talk too much about agriculture, just wanted to point out that, just to be complete, there's other things we would do there. So here's the tricky page. Remember what I said at the introduction. The question isn't whether we personally agree or disagree with spending tax dollars on this. The question is whether this is something that the community should decide on. And I'm of the opinion that the community should decide this. And the answer may be, we don't spend money on this. And I'm okay with that. But I really, really want the community to have that decision, personally. That's the reason I'm involved with this subcommittee, and that's the reason I suggested a long time ago that we're looking at setting goals. So, yeah, we could set goals without putting any budget, but to me that seems really hollow. It seems, personally, I think it would be counterproductive. It would suggest that we're somehow gonna pull this out of our backsides when we haven't, for, you know, by not investing money into it. So what we've outlined here is a sustainability director, full-time. That's a big commitment, okay? Concord's a bigger town, and they hired a full-time. We talked to her, and she said, you know, some things might scale with community size, but a lot doesn't. That sustainability director could bring in a lot of grant money. However, important caveat, most of these grants are set up to leverage money that the town and municipality is investing on its own. So if you put in $1, we'll put in $1. But you still have to put in your buck. You don't get the money and not put in the buck. That's the problem. So we could leverage. We could bring in $150,000 in that range, or $200,000 a year, potentially. I'm not saying we could, but we might be able to. I said that number because the sustainability director in Concord set a goal for herself to bring in grant money at least as much as her salary. Now, I don't know what her salary is. This is fully loaded.
Sure.
But, so, you know, it might be unrealistic to do that in Carlisle. But we could bring in some money. I don't know what the expenses would be. There certainly would be additional staff time, especially initially, as people get used to the different way of thinking, so we just put in a placeholder. But order of magnitude, this is the kind of number we're talking about. And in terms of, you know, which set of goals, wouldn't it be more money to go with the more aggressive goals? The way we're thinking about it right now is maybe the difference would be same amount of dollar investment, but more aggressive regulatory and policy changes. So we would pay more in terms of what we would give up. If we went with a more aggressive goal, we might have to do more regulatory policy changes, codes and stuff. We really do need, if you build a new home, it's going to have to be zero energy, that kind of thing.
Any new building in town,
or
actually.
even any new building, not just a home. We could even do this potentially for additions and things. You know, so nobody can tell you that this amount of spending per year would get us there. But I think it's safe to say if we don't do anything, we're probably not going to get there. We could sit and wait for the state to do it. I mean, the state set these goals, but what's the state going to do if the communities don't do it? I mean, we're the ones who have to do it in the end. So that's my spiel. That's our spiel. I should say my spiel.
I'm going to send everybody, there was an excellent interview in the Concord Journal from Kate Hanley.
I haven't read that yet.
And I'll send it to everybody actually, and it just explains what she's doing after a year. And I think that it's good because it's much better than us trying to explain what she was doing.
So, what I did not put on here was talking to the select board, but I think the important things are in terms of process is that we coordinate with the master plan steering committee to get community input, and I'm hoping that we as a task force can agree on what we're going to recommend to that steering committee. What do we get input on? I don't think you can just say, oh, you know, do you care about the environment? Yes or no. I think this kind of level of detail has to be out there so people understand the implications of what they're reacting to.
You can't just say, I want to be green
Right.
anymore. That doesn't hold any water.
Yeah, we all want to be green. question is, are you willing to,
Are you
what are you
willing-
willing to do?
What are you willing to
be
do?
green?
Yeah.
And obviously.
Think not what you can do for your country, think what you can do for your planet.
There's a lot of refinement and documentation we need to do, but personally, I think the key thing is to get community input and get these ideas in the right form. So I want to shut up. I know it's late. We spent a lot of time on recycling. I think that was important. But let's open it up for discussion.
Well, so I did a quick little calculation. On average, we're using in the United States 7 7 metric tons per
Person?
person. Let's see. Hold on.
That's low.
Yeah, I think it's 15.
That's low.
Sorry, we're using 16 kilowatts continuously per person. You convert it to kilowatts.
That's crazy. The average house draws about 1 kilowatt.
Continuously.
Continuously. That,
Right.
you're using a lot of fossil fuels, so that's not the whole picture, but it's 16, basically what it's saying is 16 times your electric bill. 16 times your electric usage.
Yeah, that's the conundrum.
For the
Even if you
household.
solarize your house with solar panels and eliminate your electric bill, even if you have an electric car, and the solar panels make all the electricity for your electric car, you're still like a factor of 10 more. There's still 10 times more that you have to do to wipe out your footprint, your carbon footprint, when you include all the embedded stuff and, on average.
So
Because
it
they're all
was
refined.
when they made these Carlisle's Hidden Secret, and the students worked out it was 12 planets we needed to live in Carlisle. We were using up the resources of 12 planets. That's how
But I
bad
think-
we are. And I think the average American is like 4.5 or something, or 4.
Well, we know we have 5% of the population, and we emit something like 25% of the carbon. So, one could conclude from what you just said that we can't do it. We're gonna melt the planet and that's all we're gonna do.
Well, the other thing I think is that, there's sort of 2 factors. There's population is driving it, and then technology is driven it. And the 2 kind of work together, because we couldn't have the population we have today on this planet, I don't think, with the technology.
Oh, for sure,
Oh, that-
technology is essential. So we're 7 billion. The projections I've heard said we'll stabilize at 10 or 11 billion.
Yeah.
I don't remember how long out that is, but for reasons that I don't fully understand, it does stabilize. Well, I think there's some assumptions about the fact that as countries develop, they actually stop having kids.
Educate the women.
Yes,
The number 6 on how to get to
Yeah.
a sustainable planet. Number 6 is educate women. Number 7 give women access to family planning, not men, women. And that I think is something we never discuss because it's never an issue here. But that's probably why we get to the point.
And the other thing that, carbon taxes don't seem to have gained any traction whatsoever. It was defeated in Washington. I think they had a referendum recently that was pushed pretty hard. It looked like it had a chance, but it failed.
In Washington? Or
State of Washington,
Oh, it's state of
Yeah.
Washington, sorry.
I believe it was.
I was gonna say.
But
Yeah, it's tough.
I think technology is, will also have a big impact. I mean, as solar cell prices come down, I mean, the new tin and lead-based crystals that they're achieving 20+% efficiencies, with like an ink that they can print on a substrate.
Compared to what?
Compared to silicon.
Panels.
20% compares to what number we're getting today?
Oh, silicon, we're
15.
at like 21 or, 20.
We're already at
efficiency.
20.
Yes, but but this is a new technology and they've already
So they can
ramped it
match
up.
what we're doing at a lower price.
Yeah, and they're 23% they're starting to get. So, and then electric cars, I think you're
And
not gonna be
autonomous
able to buy an
vehicles.
electric, gas car in 5 years.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
it's gonna
if
switch
you
over
look at-
really quickly.
Well, there are people who, you sent me some articles that say the same thing.
Yeah.
And I've been holding off, waffling on that. I got my electric chainsaw, I got my electric lawnmower. I started with the little stuff.
It's just,
And-
no, it's going to come down to this,
Stop.
it's gonna be like phones, that's it.
It's gonna be driven by economics.
It's just, and then it's going to be, the other thing we haven't really discussed
No.
about buildings is that we're getting to the point of, it's so expensive to build now. It's very difficult it's harder and harder to find contractors in this part of the world. And it's actually going to be harder to retrofit your house, which is another issue that, there's all these other factors, like we can think we can do the best things possible even with resources, if we had a bottomless pit in money, but we actually don't have the people to do the work here.
Well,
'Cause guess what, they've all gone down south where they're rebuilding after hurricanes and things like that. And it's going to get
No.
worse like that.
Usually there's a supply and demand balance. If they're making a lot of money here, they're willing
People
to
just
do
aren't,
the
people
work.
aren't going into the construction industry. How many kids have you seen leave school from us at Carlisle and said, I'm going to go and go,
You can say that about electricians and plumbers and everything, but. Okay.
Okay.
Other thoughts, ideas, reactions?
I do think you're gonna need, when you go into this, at least what I felt was you had all kinds of great stuff described, and then all of a sudden you sprung, we're gonna need this much money for a person.
A little abrupt?
Yeah, so from my perspective, you need to explain what this person's gonna do somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And if
Try
they're
not to
gonna
make it
come
too
up with
long.
grants, if they're gonna pay for their own salary,
Yeah,
whatever, that kind of stuff needs to be before you say it's gonna cost this much money, otherwise I think you'll turn off the average person.
Okay.
It seems to me that, again, the economies of scale in Carlisle don't allow us to do this because in Concord, I think it was a struggle for them to get just one person, right? And we're significantly, well, we don't have commercial real estate, our tax rate's high already, but we're much smaller, so I forget what's the ratio between us and Concord. I think, well, it's about
We're-
3 to 1, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we would only be able to get like 10 hours a week type person.
or you restructure your government to put sustainability in the middle. And so that person, everything is, you put somebody who's much higher. You're not talking just about sustainability director. You're talking about somebody sitting underneath the town manager, and everything has to be reviewed. It makes it a much more powerful position. And therefore results in having.
David Flannery probably was a sort of a very sustainable type person at the school and was doing stuff many years ago, right, for energy efficiency. But somebody like Gary Davis is not, he doesn't seem to be all that tuned into, like he's adamantly opposed to pay-as-you-throw, for instance.
But again,
I think what it would take in Carlisle is that we would have to have staff who were hired where that was a key performance criteria. Maybe that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying,
example.
is it depends, just maybe taking the Concord model isn't the right solution, and it's hard because we're sort of like one step, Concord was fairly advanced, other places have it, like Cambridge, have a sustainability director like Cambridge and all that, but we're not small towns, and so how does a small town do it,
I think, we're at such a disadvantage. Our government, as far as I could tell, barely functions.
Well, okay.
No, I think we're doing great here.
Now, hang on.
Well,
Let me just
It's
give
all
an
volunteer run, but there's a lot of people that are invested in this town doing a lot of stuff.
no, that's
example.
true.
There are alternatives. Let's look at Lincoln. Now, John Snell, who is very involved in Lincoln resident, we've been working with him on the Heat Smart program, know him pretty well. I asked him, Lincoln's 6,000 people, roughly the same size as Carlisle. I says, well, what is Lincoln doing regarding goals? And he says, or hiring someone like a sustainability director. And he says, small town like we are, we can't afford it. And you know what? The mentality in our town and our town government is already, we have to do this. We don't need to set goals for Lincoln. We're doing it. We're hammering this stuff. We're going for what the state's trying to do. We're going to try to beat it. Now, are they being successful at that? I don't have the data. But he felt, for Lincoln, that they know they have the community behind them. There's no question. And they're running ahead. We don't know this in Carlisle. I don't know this in Carlisle. I don't know anybody who knows the answer to this question. And I've asked a lot of people what their thought was. And I've gotten different answers. But we don't know where the bulk of the Carlisle residents sit on this issue and what they want to do if they were given the opportunity to do something like this. And that's, again, that's where I'm coming from. Let's let people decide. The question is, in my mind, the question is what do we present to them and how do we present it in a way that can get them to tell the master planning group what they want and get that into the master plan somehow.
And I know that we're going to segue into the Green Community Grants in a minute, so I'm just going to highlight that Carlisle brings in $128 per person, or has brought in $128 per person over the length of the community, of the Green Community Grants, and Lincoln has brought in 94 per person. So they don't.
But again, this is just that little thin sliver of municipal.
They haven't applied for Green Community Grant since 2015.
They're concentrating on
So I think we do have
Well,
some
maybe they
evidence
don't have
that-
anything left to go, and it's too much work.
Historic stuff, right?
No, I'm not
Thing,
accusing them. I'm
We're
just.
gonna get this.
We got extremely broad support, right, for the whole green communities thing, whatever that was, 7, 8.
No, we
years
didn't.
ago.
We were at one
Didn't
time
we?
against the selectmen,
Oh, yeah.
head to head with the selectmen.
Right, but by the time it got to town meeting, did we not get a
No, the
substantial
No,
selectmen
vote
said
there?
no, the selectmen voted against it, against our becoming a green community.
Yeah, I know the selectmen did, but
And they
when it
were
went to town
overruled.
meeting,
Oh, the town meeting did
Did-
vote for it.
yes, by a broad support, didn't it?
No, it wasn't. It was one.
Well, we
from
did-
I don't know. I wasn't here,
Yeah, I was
but
here.
from what I remember, it wasn't a fantastic. From what I remember
Well,
reading in the Mosquito, it wasn't like a
It
overwhelming
wasn't,
like 90%.
it wasn't overwhelming, but it
Really?
did, but it was,
It was enough.
it was probably surprising.
It has to be
that they
2/3.
went
Yeah, it had to be
against-
2/3.
Yeah, and it was.
But
Because
think
it was
think about what Green Communities has been. I mean, this is a gift,
Oh, I know.
right? I mean, I'm not aware of anything available through any source that's as attractive as Green Communities.
Right.
In terms of, it actually often pays for the entire project to fix or replace stuff that's gonna need fixing or replacing anyway, and then it saves us money. There's not even an upfront investment, except for all the volunteer time that all of you have been doing for years.
But the big stumbling block, I think, was the solar overlay district that had to be created
Yes.
to qualify.
And how many solar panels have we put in that solar overlay district?
But there was a huge conundrum or controversy because people didn't want it at the transfer station. There were people adamantly opposed to green communities because they didn't want solar panels anywhere near their house.
Right.
Right.
And they
Right.
and David Friedman apparently went around and they came up with a 12-foot maximum height kind of thing.
Yes.
So
Solar
and
pass.
they kind of, that was the compromise or whatever. But it wasn't a
No.
straightforward.
Well, look at, the issue that Debbie wrote about in the Mosquito of, all this work that, again, Bob and the rest of the community's been doing for this municipal solar project. And, yeah, we're moving ahead, but on a third of it, a quarter of it? I don't know the percentages, but
Yeah.
we said, even in our overlay district that was already zoned for solar, we can't put in solar.
Right, well, exactly, and so it was
Yeah.
kind of almost a no-op. The other reason they got it passed was they assured people that the town owned that land so that it would have to go through the Board of Selectmen before any solar would be put there. So it wasn't like you were zoning a piece of private land where somebody could just come in, buy it, and then say, okay, everybody, you know, I've got a right to do this. So there were number of assurances that were put in place that effectively blocked or mitigated the whole thing.
Well, Jonathan originally brought up this point, and I guess what we're saying is that vote for green communities, we can't necessarily count on that. We don't know
Okay, we don't
where
know
this
why.
is, where people are at. And oh, by the way, nobody has the authority to ask for money without going to a town vote
Right.
anyway. So it ultimately has to be decided by the community whether we want it to be decided or not.
Yeah, well, I
And
think,
the
I
question
think
we're
that's
trying to
already,
get, what we're trying to get tonight
Yeah.
is feedback on, what the message should be and what we should tell the select board we're doing and what should we tell the master plan committee we're doing here.
it's interesting, cause I think
And
the
is this the
select
right
board-
message or is this off base?
Well, I think it's, you know, the message that you're sending in the first 5 or 6 slides is great, but then when you hit the dollar
And the
and what it
money,
would cost, the $150K,
Yeah.
that kind of, I mean, I just picture what happened to France recently. And, you know, you gotta do things, small steps. I know you wanna rush this because of the 2050 and all, but I don't think the community can move that fast, I really don't. I'll move slow. And to say you need 150 grand plus 25 expenses and plus another
Well,
50 to, well, hear me out
Yeah,
there
yeah.
first.
No, no,
Hang on.
You know, that is going to be a shocker to a lot of the people in this town, because that's almost, you're talking very close to 1% on their taxes right away.
Right.
Just check, because of the cost.
Right, turn that
So-
around. Say if the community said, yes, we want sustainability, we want to do something about this, and we need to put sustainability at the heart of our town management in order to do this. Then you go to the town management and say, that's the mission statement from the town, how are you going to achieve that? And then the town management has to come up with a way that they are going to achieve that, without putting a dollar sign saying you have to have something. What we can say is, this is how other towns have solved their problem, or, you know, like Concord's hired somebody and it's cost this much. Lincoln's done
You understand
this.
that Concord has solved, so you think
But I'm
Concord has
not
solved
saying
the
that was the
problem,
right
but
solution for
Concord
them.
hasn't solved the problem, have they met the
No.
goal?
No, I'm just saying, Concord is trying to achieve the goal by hiring somebody. Lincoln is doing it this way. We can try and find out whether Boxborough or Harvard, the town of Harvard, has done anything. I think you have towns that are roughly the same size, although Harvard's got completely different issues. Probably Boxborough's got different issues too, but we could look at the other and say, well, this is how other towns have solved the problem, and then actually just put it back to the town management, saying, if the town votes for it, then you will have to
Here's
look
the
at this.
question. I mean, from my way of thinking, well, first of all, in terms of the timing, it's really dictated by the new master plan.
Right.
So Wayne Davis convinced us, and perhaps we should have figured it out on our own anyway, but that's the way, this has to be rolled into that. So the timing for the master plan community input is the timing for this. And it's not me pushing it fast or me pushing it slow, that's dictated. I don't know what would be a step that would cost less money, you know, spend $50,000 the first year to do what? You
There's a
know,
lot of things, yeah, right, there's a lot of things that can be done in this community, that we have done in this community, that hasn't cost the taxpayer anything, like through volunteers. Just the fact of saying in the town and pushing for,
yep.
you know, the next building that we build, or any building, any structure being built is zero, is a huge thing, that doesn't cost the taxpayers anything,
Right.
other than the new developer coming in and all, and you start moving gradually towards that. Just to drop a bombshell and say, boom, this is what it's gonna cost, it's gonna, how you can get people to support something like that if they see the dollar sign? Get rid of the dollar sign. There's only
Well,
one
here's the
doing it.
question, here's
I
the
just-
question. I'm biased towards having dollar signs, they could be big ranges.
Right.
Because we don't know these numbers and we can't prove them. But the problem with not having dollar signs is what is the meaning of community input if there's no dollar sign? It's like saying, I wanna be green, I wanna support this goal, great, let's go. Next time there's a town vote and a town meeting and there's something on the table for $200,000 increase in tax to support that goal, people are gonna vote it down.
Yeah.
And the question is, what was the point of even introducing or even asking people without telling them what the implications are? I
But-
think it's
I don't know. I mean,
it's a little
we spent
dishonest
$3
not to
million
tell
on
people.
stuff for the, the police and the fire so that they can
Yeah.
communicate with each other, and the town was overwhelmingly voting positive on that. So I'm not sure that you can necessarily say that they're gonna vote stuff down. If we understand
no,
what
no,
it's gonna
I-
be for, then I think the
Yeah.
town would generally be
I'm-
supportive.
I shouldn't have worded it that way. I think it's two separate things. If people, and this is an opinion, I could be incorrect here, that if we really want to know how people feel on a subject, we need to give them background information. And we need to give them some sense of the implications in dollars to get a true opinion.
Mhm.
If we really want to know what the town thinks about putting this stuff in our master plan and really doing it, let's tell them what it's gonna cost. Now, and I didn't mean to suggest that they're not willing to pay for it. What I meant to suggest is, it's very easy for people to say, yeah, let's be green and set goals. It's a whole nother thing to say, oh, by the way, now you need to spend money. And I would, as a resident of this town, I would feel angry if that's the way it was presented to me. It's like, oh, well, you didn't tell me I was gonna have to spend $200,000 a year to do this. Even as someone who's environmentally motivated, I wanna spend money as a town, and I'm willing to spend money as a town. But I wanna be told when you ask my opinion about something. So that's why I'm coming back to giving people the information. And I know it's very hard because you can't tell them how much it's gonna cost, and you can't prove that any amount of money will get us there.
Right. My feeling is that having somebody, with the way the town works now, if, let's say there was an office and it said sustainability director and they were paid, we set aside $250,000 or whatever, so you could have a person and staff, I don't know if they'd be able to get anything done. Because everything around here is so kind of limited by, nobody has any extra time, staff time, to do anything beyond what they have to do. And some people actually work more hours than,
A lot of
they
people
have
do.
to.
Yeah.
A lot of people do.
Yeah.
So everything is kind of boxed in. There's no flexibility. And sometimes it may be just sort of conservative. We had money, grant money, to come in to put a new dumpster in, right, for the DPW. They said, well, no, we can't rearrange. We can't afford to take the time or the effort or whatever to, even with that grant money, to rearrange the transfer station to put in this extra compactor. And now Gary Davis could have created this presentation I just put up here, right? And he could have gone around and
Right.
to Tim and then to the Board of Selectmen and said, this is what I want to do, and but no, he's adamantly opposed
Why?
to pay as you throw. I'm not sure exactly why. One of the reasons is I know that I went to Littleton and talked to them, and they said 6 years ago when this was proposed, we as DPW staff were totally against this. And I think the reason he explained is that they have problems enforcing even dump stickers. They have people get belligerent, and I shouldn't have to pay for this, or my property tax is so high, or blah, 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 whatever it is. And so they're figuring, okay, pay as you throw is gonna make that 10 times worse. And so they're like, which is never gonna work, and blah, blah, blah. Turns out, after the fact, they said it did work, and it was, 6 weeks, they had to have extra people, and then everything was all set. So the point is, I
Back
think
to
that
Gary, though, I mean,
you've got all
he
these.
probably wouldn't have done this, and even if he had the time, so I don't know, he didn't do this because the input. he's
Yeah,
not
we
doing
don't,
this-
it's a combination,
Yeah.
but I think that, what you have to have, I think, is somebody at the top, the town administrator, who says, all you people work for me, we have performance reviews, and, you know, you have to be showing me that you're doing the best possible thing to reduce energy.
That's part of what the plan is here.
Right,
How do you-
but I
how do
think-
you- How do you get that? How do you get that?
Well, I think
We
you have,
we
you
don't
have to
it
get the
today.
selectmen who are the chairman of the board of the corporation, they have to, when they hire the town administrator, they have to
Yeah, but they
interview and
haven't
say-
done that.
No,
They're
I
not
know,
going
but
to
that's
do
the
that.
first step. You gotta get
Whoa,
them.
whoa, 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 whoa.
to buy
No,
in.
no, it's not I disagree.
That's
It's
the
not
last
the
step.
first step. It's not the first step. They only do that when they get the signal from the town that that's what the town wants them to do.
Right, but that's,
That has to be an overwhelming message or mandate to the select board to do this stuff. That has to be the first step.
right, but that doesn't talk about money. I don't think
Yes.
you need to, because I think Bill is right, you don't wanna put a number on it, because first we have to get the people to overwhelmingly support it, and maybe we have to get them to understand
It's gonna cost.
that it's,
Yeah.
well, that it may or may not cost money, but it's going to,
And
you
what-
wanna put
what
a
is
mandate in
what
front of
is
the board of selectmen that this
Yes.
is
I'd
the most important
I'd love a
thing.
way to do this that doesn't cost money. What is it?
Well, I think that if it was part of the performance requirements for the town administrator,
So
which
that
are
covers,
set by the
that covers
selectmen.
that 3% sliver of municipal. What do we do with the 96% that's the residential side?
That, I think, is only going to really happen because of choices in the marketplace.
I agree with you.
I
there.
don't think somebody sitting in an office here is going
Once-
to have any impact on
Once
that.
you start building buildings that are zero, and then fuel prices start going up, and people will start saying, wait a minute, it's costing me $10,000 to heat my home when this person doesn't cost them maybe $100 or $1,000. That's
But
when you're
how
gonna,
many, what percentage of homes are net zero energy today? They're new homes.
maybe 5, I don't know.
What
6.
percent of new construction in Massachusetts is net zero?
Well, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
Bob, that's what I'm saying, is that if Carlisle worked on, and it maybe this committee worked on a bylaw that says that any new construction has to be zero-based.
Yeah.
That's where we start, I think, and then eventually, as the economics change, and the cost to run a house like mine versus a brand-new house, sooner or later, it's gonna be saying is, I'm not gonna live in this house anymore, I'm gonna move out, and this house is gonna be raised, and it's gonna be rebuilt as a zero, you know? And once that happens, these huge, I mean, there's a lot of large houses that have been built in the last 5 years that cost less to heat than my house. And I only have a 2,200 square foot house.
But we're not gonna tear down all these houses.
Well, eventually it'll go, it'll have to, because
But how long-
economically
how
it
long
won't
does
be.
No, you
sustainable.
won't, yeah.
How long does the house
would-
last?
A
No,
house
it's not.
there's no reason like a house like Bill's and mine shouldn't last a long time. It's actually got excellent structure.
Right.
And
But
it can be retrofitted. Certainly, Bill's house could be retrofitted
Yes.
to be more energy efficient.
Yes.
And that's what's going to happen. The problem we have is the other issue about actually we're not going to have robot. It's going to be well, they've got robots that can do plasterboard now, but it's going to be a long time before we have robot workmen.
But it's the economics, I think, is gonna drive it, I really do.
And, but small houses
For the
like
residents.
small houses like Bill's are going to become more in demand. In fact, they already are.
Mine's gonna be worth $3 million.
And Bill, you don't have an average small house. Your house is still bigger than
I know, it's too big. One
So,
floor.
yeah, I mean, going back, I'm trying to put this into the minutes and all this, and I've just said that we should look at the last slides about how many the grants that we can achieve when we have somebody who's directing the sustainability, and that we can review how other towns have brought sustainability into its management, and add a couple, no more than 2 slides in.
Yeah,
I think is that the general
That-
feeling I'm
that's-
trying to get?
That's a piece of it, but I feel there's something much more fundamental at play here, like there needs to be another option, which is not up here yet, which is, don't hire a sustainability director, but come up with another method. I don't know if we can come up with this method, but the example of building codes or zoning ordinances, I guess, would be for what we could do as a town. I don't even fully
I don't even
understand
know
what we can do as a town.
versus the code versus ordinances versus you might be able, you know, you can
Well, we
swing
know,
things
we
like
know we can do some things because the new bylaw that
Yeah.
went in for that, woodland development
Mhm. Yeah.
was, had language in it that I objected to at the time, but for a lot of reasons it couldn't get fixed at the time, that these homes needed to be some level of energy efficiency. There was gobbledygook language in there that didn't mean anything to me, and I didn't find any definition anywhere, but, the point is, it was something that was above and beyond the current building code that these homes are supposed to be built to. So, we did it in that bylaw. We did something in the bylaw. We may not have done the right thing, but the point is there was a mechanism there. Apparently, you can specify effectively that homes have to be built better than code, because we did it there, right?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Well, no, we put in language,
Mhm.
again, and it may just be,
Can we ask David Friedman exactly?
well, he's the one I pointed this out to, and,
Or maybe Claude can ask him.
Yeah, sure, I'll ask him.
Yeah, okay.
I'd like,
But I mean, one of the biggest things we could do, you know, on the energy is energy creation, right? Generation of energy, solar energy. And solar is probably the most effective way to generate per square foot, you know, of land use, you know, energy. It's better than
as
wind.
opposed to wind, I mean,
Well-
what else is there?
Well, growing trees and burning them.
Okay.
Biomass, in other words, right? You've got solar, you've got wind, hydro is probably more, but that involves a big reservoir, a big river, and so on and so
We don't
forth.
have
So
that stuff,
yeah, we don't have that stuff. So not talking about hydro, but solar. You know, we tried really hard to get a solar bylaw, which we have now, but it's quite restrictive in terms of setbacks, in terms of the total size, in terms of okay, you need to do site plan review if you want to do you know this, you need at least 4 acres and blah 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 blah. It was really, you know, it tweaked down quite a bit from what it could be, you know. And I'm not going to say that was the right or the wrong thing, but what I'm saying is that there is a lot. Carlisle is a very conservative town, and is what's a much higher priority is how much open space do we have? You know, we don't want to be cutting down any trees, which is evidenced by what happened with this other thing. So trees are higher priority, vistas are higher priority, open space is higher priority, and then at best comes anything that we might talk about.
So what's your
energy-wise.
recommendation, Claude? I mean, you're bringing up a lot of really, really good points, but I still don't know what your recommendation
Well,
is.
my
Do we give
recommendation-
up on this, or do
Well,
we
I
try
think
to
the
do something?
sustainability, I agree with Bill. I
What
think
would you suggest? Well, and what I'm trying to do is translate what you and Bill are recommending to something actionable. I still don't know what I need to do to address the point that you two are making. And maybe I don't fully understand the point.
Well, I think that, you know, you're saying,
what's the,
about
are
the
you
cost.
suggesting a
I think
different
in
option
terms
here?
of, well, okay, you could say, look, we need, you know, to expand, create some solar overlay districts beyond just the carports or whatever. You know, that would be a concrete thing that you could bring to the voters.
So you're saying, like, some of this policies, maybe this is the wrong list, but pursue policy avenues, in other words.
Yes, I think
For
because
instance-
those are sort of zero cost to the town in a sense in terms of property taxes. I
Well,
don't know
we
how
also-
many of these
Well,
could
you
get
just-
passed.
But also, can I just say, we have 2 very large car parks in 2 churches that are completely a waste of space, in my opinion. Because I've never seen them full on a Sunday, but, well, one I haven't seen full on a Sunday. But, maybe it was the wrong Sunday, I don't know. But they're just asphalt. They do nothing. No, you know, all days apart from one day of the week. And
So
why are we, that's where it comes down to this, you know, a carbon tax. It's almost like a land use tax. If you're not actually doing something with your land and it's just there for parking for one day a week, there's an issue, you know.
So
It should be.
suppose we
So-
put
but-
canopies in every parking lot in
Yeah.
town, how much would
That's
that
a huge-
move the needle?
It wouldn't
You
move it
can't
much.
say
No, it would.
personal
It would
property,
make a difference.
people's
Well,
personal
No,
property,
you
can't
can tax,
dictate.
but you can tax them.
You could, but I mean, I don't know if that's gonna fly in this.
Well,
No, I'm
so-
just saying, is that, you know, I mean,
Well, you
I'm
could,
throwing out lots
you
of
could say,
ideas
look, we
here.
wanna expand the solar overlay district to include these three parts, the school, the church, and these two churches. Do you vote for that? And the church could say, well, no, we don't want it. But if they control the land, they don't have to put up solar panels. It would just
That's
allow
true.
them to do it.
They could
But
do a
that's so
municipal solar
specific,
program
it's-
like we got now.
But
Yeah.
The purpose of this is to say, rather than taking a very narrow, very focused action like that, to say, what do we wanna do? And, on a bigger scale. And, we're looking at way more things. How do we address energy efficiency? How do we get electric vehicles going? How do we make it easy for people to do things? And I agree with Bill, this is America, we're not gonna tell people you have to do this on your own land. But if somebody is like me, on the edge of buying an electric vehicle, I need something to nudge me over why I'm gonna spend $35,000 on a car that otherwise costs half that price, or spend $70,000 on a car that would otherwise cost half that price. They're about double a gasoline car. They have a range that's really short, and I have to figure out how to work with that. They take forever to charge, so I have to figure out how to work with that. So what is it that the town is doing to make it easy for me to make that, easier for me to make that plunge? I wanna do it because I think it's the right thing to do, but I'm looking at these things that are holding me back. So that's an example.
Why should government even push you in either direction?
Well, because I believe the science of climate change, and I think that it's a huge cost that
Electric
we're
cars
pretending
are-
is not gonna happen.
Electric cars need a lot less maintenance.
That's,
But
You know,
I
you
think if,
that's not why we're going to.
No, no, I'm
Right,
just,
exactly.
I know, I'm
but I
just,
think,
but
but
there's
Bob,
lots of
I think
reasons.
as time goes on, you know, even if Claude's prediction is true, which I think it's gonna be within 10 years myself, but sooner or later, you're gonna be pushed into that decision to get that electric car because the other one is not gonna make sense.
It's like, do you have a rotary phone? How many people have rotary phones in their houses?
Have what?
Rotary phones in their houses.
So what I'm missing here, I guess what I'm hearing is, well, we'll let market forces just somehow take care of all this stuff, and I'm not seeing that happening in the past 30 years.
But I don't see a sustainability director as being effective at all.
No.
Well,
and I also don't see just saying, you know, town administrator, you're gonna do this now, because
Well,
all the people in the town heads are buried. And you're seeing right now, like the town clerk looking for more hours, you're seeing Board of Health looking for more hours, you're seeing Conscom will be asked for more hours.
Yeah, Conscom, but
We're at
Mary
this little
Hopkins.
peak right now where there's a lot of FTEs that are needed. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, I got the knee-jerk reaction when I saw that, because
Let-
there are so many needs just to keep the town
There are.
running.
And
So
With the status
what are
quo.
the,
Yeah, just the
what
status
are the
quo.
what I'm trying to translate all this into is, what are the implications? Does that mean we shouldn't try to do this?
I think it means
No,
you
I-
should not talk about the dollars at the outset. I think your purpose was to get the town
All
to be behind the idea. And I think the absolute worst way to get the town behind the idea is to
Hey guys, it's gonna cost you money.
Yes, exactly.
So-
Well, it's very interesting, if you look
I'm
at
happy
how
to-
the master planning committee has gone, where they've always known that it's going to cost more than 100,000 to get a master plan done, because again, the fact we're a small town doesn't mean that we get to pay less. And it's taken them a long time of just preparing the town for, hey guys, this is
Gonna
kind of
cost
the
some
number
money.
you're gonna see at town meeting.
Agree. Oh, and the other
And,
thing too is,
and when they started on that, there were people saying, there is no way, we did the last master plan ourselves.
right.
Yeah, we did it on the back of an envelope and it's 3 pages long, it doesn't quite
You
fly.
gotta understand
In
too, is that the
2020.
master plan isn't a Bible, it is just
A
a master
guideline.
plan and a guideline, and it should be updated maybe every 2 years or 3 years, or even 1 year.
5 years. 5
That's
years.
too long, because things change, technology changes, the desires of the town change, people in the town change. you know?
Demographics.
And so the master plan should be a living document.
As
And
should
just-
this goal.
Exactly, so I mean.
That's why
now-
they need to be linked.
Yeah, yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I think they do
I
need
think
to be
it should
linked.
be in the master plan, I agree, 100%, that there's something like this should be there, and it should be looked at every year or so, and seeing if we're going in the right direction, and we should be trying to retain it. That's-
Can I say one more thing?
You can, yeah.
We're an hour behind where we were supposed to adjourn. And
Yeah.
some of us were out a little late on New Year's Eve,
Yeah.
or at least
Yeah.
up a little late
I
on
was
New
gonna
Year's
bring
Eve.
that up.
I think we ought to skip the rest of the agenda for
No, we
another
can't.
time.
We can't.
Well, I can't stay.
Oh, no, I'm
for-
just saying, we can't because we have to submit a
That's
report on
okay.
Friday.
Oh.
So,
So there, you know,
Yeah.
it's not,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we do have to go through something.
all right, we'll stop the discussion on this,
we need
although-
to just
whoa,
do the-
whoa, hang on.
Sorry.
What I do wanna ask the group to do is to, send me some emails, just to me, don't send them to the group. I would like more feedback and suggestions on how to modify this. Happy to take out the dollar signs, but, come up with alternatives for, sustainability directors, whatever that would mean.
Can you send a copy of that?
I'm going to send this deck around, yep. We will skip a few agenda items, so we'll just do one more. And we have a quorum at the start of the meeting, we do not need a quorum, we do not need everyone to stay. In other words, people who need to leave may leave the meeting, and we can still take a vote with the remaining people, if I understand.
Yes.
No.
You can't vote.
What?
You can't vote if you don't have a quorum.
Yeah.
You can conduct
You can
business.
conduct business and keep going, but you can't.
All right, so
I
what do
don't
we
know
need to vote?
I
What
don't
do
know if
we
we
need to
need to
vote
vote, we
I don't
just
think
need
we
to
do.
review that the information
Okay.
that I am submitting
Okay.
is
accurate.
correct.
So Helen
Which
can-
is because it's
No,
not, it's a
I'll
quarterly
stay
report, it's
for-
not an annual report.
What,
So we can't vote, okay, we don't need to vote. We have the floor.
Okay, I just want to run through, this will actually cover both the green communities,
Quarterly report.
and the quarterly report at the same time, right. So I'm just gonna run through each of the projects. I've got an update from the state about exactly what money was given to what project now, so that was incorrect beforehand in the one I sent out earlier. Okay, the first one is the, the fans, the rooftop energy recovery units. The information, this is for the end of the year, so you reported that it was 75% complete, or rather AECOM said it was 75% complete.
Keep it at that, no change.
Right, okay, we haven't been billed or anything for that.
Correct.
All right, LED lighting and sensor is
100%.
it's 100% complete, but we
Yeah.
have not been invoiced.
Well, we have now, but you can.
We have not been invoiced as of the last of
December,
the year.
yeah, right.
Right. And I've got the correct Eversource rebate now for that, which was a little bit different.
Did I send you some stuff on?
You did, I did, and so the
Was my stuff accurate, I hope?
your numbers weren't accurate for the amounts exactly, the amount.
Like the pennies? Okay,
But,
yeah.
that's why I went back. There was a
Yeah.
lot of, and that's why I went back to what had the state given us. The destratification funds.
That's still on hold.
So that is on, and that's at 0%. Nothing has happened.
Nothing's happened there, as far as I know, in this business, so.
No. Right. I'll come back to that when I talked about the last project. The LED lighting at DPW is 100% complete.
Yeah,
It's
and
invoiced
invoiced.
and paid.
Yeah.
And Priscilla just emailed me the confirmation of those two items. So I have that to include in the report. Town hall, 3-way replacement valves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Supposed to start mid-January.
We have, we've issued procurement January 2nd, and you're going to start 7th of January, correct?
Yes, as far as I know. I haven't
And by
heard
the way,
anything yet.
so what happened was, I went through all this, none of these needed any electrical permits. I checked with John today, so that's not, we don't need to, I've just put that as not applicable in there. I'm going to actually delete a lot of the line items that we've had from Pamela, because they're
Yeah,
all non-applicable, and
I
it's
agree.
like, why have we got this,
I
is so
agree.
really complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm gonna clean up that tonight. While watching Elizabeth Warren and Rachel Maddow at midnight. As I've now missed her. Idling reduction for town vehicles. Now this is coming in at an amazing, we had a grant for $14,520, and it's come in at $525.
Because he's only doing one vehicle.
And we can do 2, I think. We're asking him to do 2. We have one that has I think been done, but we've not been invoiced. I'm not quite too sure, but the invoice will be issued this week, so it doesn't go into this report, so I don't need to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to aim for 2 because it's so reasonably priced. Claude is hopefully negotiating with
Chief
Fisher
Fisher.
about that, getting the second one done.
Well, he says he's got 2 that he's gonna
So-
do. I don't know. I
So-
haven't touched base with him recently.
So we have an additional $13,470 that we could
Right.
ask to put back into the stratification grant,
Mhm.
and we have to go through Neil to do that.
And before you do that, you need to negotiate with Guardian
Exactly,
to
so
make sure they want to do it.
that's really, I think, what I was going to ask you is, could you say looks like we will have some extra money, how much for the whole job?
Unfortunately, I wasn't the one that negotiated and talked to Guardian, it was Dan, so I mean, I could start if you wanted me to.
I think you have to, because I think I think we
It's
have to
at
make
Dalton, I know that the original price was double what we got.
yeah,
28,000 or something.
and so we've got an extra
But this is pretty
13.
close to that
That's
number,
very
right?
close to that, so I was hoping that maybe
And could we
do it.
use our
Tweak some specs
slush
and all
fund to cover the difference? I'm sorry.
We could if, would that bring it up to the amount that they submitted? We submitted for the green.
Well, it sounds like we're really close in any case. And depending I don't even know how quickly the work would be done. I mean, we've got, what is it?
Well, I'm gonna come back to
1,500,
the-
right?
Not 3,000 this year.
I'm sorry, maybe it's 3,000, I forgot.
I don't know, I have to look, but I know this year there's 3,000, I thought they were putting in the budget first.
So
anyway.
maybe it's 3,000, so that would certainly
Cover it.
seem to get us back,
Right.
assuming the original bid is still valid.
If we've got so we have 14,200, and now we've got an extra 13,400. So we now have a possible.
So, it'd be good to do, but we need to reevaluate to see what the payback on that project was. Because the payback is zero, it's zero for us, it's not zero for the state. But when we start putting money into it now, our payback may be more than 10 or 15 years, we may not wanna spend that money on it.
You mean if it's a grant, 100% grant?
Yes.
Well, let's see what, I think what we have to do is go back to them and say, we've got a bit of extra money, can we increase?
What can you do?
What can you do? What's the best outcome you can give us? Because we have to go back to the state and ask them if we can take that money from one project and put it to the other.
Right.
And, I mean, we
I
got
can
it for
send
we got it for the
Dalton
street lights when it was just a few bits and pieces, but it was very little money
Right.
from one
Do we
project
need
the
to
other.
talk about this in the quarterly report?
No,
No, not at all.
no, it's, this is just updated.
Yep, yep.
Now, going back, the final item is the one that you think should not be controversial at all, but is the electric vehicle charging station. Okay, I think we've all been updated, if anyone's read the Mosquito about what happened at the, with the library. I went to speak to the planning office today to actually get the application for and start the process for HDC. It turns out she's going to come back to me tomorrow when George is back. But it looks like we also have to go and submit for a planning board site plan review amendment because it's at Ferns, and Ferns is a commercial in a residential area, so it has to go through it's on a site plan review, and therefore anything we do there has to go through amendment. We're going to try and run them at the same time, so we're going for the historic district on the 2nd of February, sorry, the 12th of February, and the site plan review amendment on the 11th of February for both of these things. And that
For which two? The charter?
for both HDC historic districts and for going in front of the planning board
For the charging station.
for the charging station.
In the charging station, they wanna put in the back.
And we need a draw.
Yeah.
I mean, she's going to give me the specs of exactly what she wants. It's about 2.5 hours worth of my work, or time to do that.
So-
And then we'll just, it's a sort of rubber stamp, but at least we start the process going.
Right.
What we need to do is I have to have all that information by the 18th of January to put on the drawings.
Okay.
Because there's a whole thing that has to go into newspapers and all that.
Oh, right, right.
And be advertised. So we need to sit down and sort out what we're going to do, and see where we are with Eversource. Would we, you know, if it takes long. But what I'm saying is we're running over it. By the time we get to site plan review, even if we say, yeah, you can go ahead on that day, there's then a 20-day waiting period for any people who dislike
Disagree
this.
with it. So,
And so we're over the time for green communities.
Well,
Just in site plan reviews, that's it.
So something I missed, what, we have, as far as I know, we have until May of next year, that's already this year, I guess. We can get an extension, probably fairly easily, but you're thinking.
No, I'm saying is we're losing,
that.
just the timeline, we've already gone to green communities and sort of talked to them and said, what about dropping this? And they said no. I think this whole thing about electric vehicles, I think it's actually really important given where our carbon footprint is with transportation.
into the state too, they want.
To have
they
it,
want
and so I think it does. What we're saying is this is actually effectively giving us the extra time to go back and get the right solution at the school. So will have the extra time, is what I'm trying to say to you, to renegotiate, because we're going to have to go back to the state and say we want to extend these two projects into
So,
2019-20.
Question on the charging station is that the amount of money that we've gotten, we'll get the charging station installed with Eversource helping out. Have you ever got it clarified on that, Claude, to make sure that we don't need any more money?
Well, so the charging, yeah,
'Cause we know
Eversource claims, and I visited a site where they've done this, they'll come and right to the concrete pad, they'll have wire sticking up and out, and there'll be bolts
And we
ready to
just
bolt the
purchased
station down. So we
station.
buy the station, we bolt it in
Installed.
and tie it in.
Right,
So the electrical work at that point is minor. I mean, we're talking.
okay.
So, and the charging station itself is like a $5 or $6 grand piece of equipment, but there's a fee for the software to run the station on an annual basis, and you can buy like a 5-year, thing, and you get a discount. So I think we have $9,000 set aside for the charging station.
No, we didn't. We only got 7,400.
Because I saw two numbers. Did we ask
Yes.
for 9 and we got 7?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the 7 should cover the charging station and some subscription costs to have the station on the network and ready and available. And I can tell you, I've talked with Matt a couple of times. He said he's actually gone to Daisy upstairs, who lives upstairs, and she is very excited about it, thinks of it as sort of the modern day gas station that she used to have. And supposedly he got her to sign it, but I haven't actually gotten the paperwork. So once I get that, I'll have to fill in a little sketch, put in some other information, and then send it in to Eversource.
That's a good point, he doesn't own the land.
Yeah, he doesn't own the land yet,
Daisy
until
does.
she passes away. Then apparently it becomes his. That's the arrangement. She has sort of a life estate of some kind situation. So, so yeah, Eversource will pay apparently, well, but they then have to come and do a site visit once we get the application to them. So it's not necessarily a thing.
Firm, yeah.
The other thing I realized is that in Concord Center on Main Street, there's a charge point charging station with 2 cables, which is what we would be doing. We'd be doing 2 cables. We have to, if we do the Eversource thing, to get them to participate, we have to have 2. And Matt had pointed out the 2 spaces closest to the porta potty, those are the ones he wants to use. It's in the corner there near the library.
Mhm.
So the Historic District Commission, they had to go in front of, and I got the paperwork actually, in Concord, because that's in the Historic District. So we have a precedent
We have our
of,
president, yeah.
you know, and so I have to go back there tomorrow and get the rest of the details. I couldn't find the filing because I didn't have it in the right folder. She didn't know where it was. But I have the actual certificate they got for those charging stations. And another example in New Bedford, they put in bicycle, you know, the charging station, well, not charging stations, but docking stations for bicycles were in the Historic District, and those got approved. So there's precedent for transportation-related sort of infrastructure, highly visible from the street. And we're talking about putting it behind where it's barely visible from the street. So it's hard to imagine that our Historic Commission is going to, you know, yeah, I mean, it would be rather restrictive compared to what other towns that have serious historic districts like Concord. And Lexington is also, Eversource is going in front of Lexington's Historic District Commission this month to, for some charging stations apparently that are more prominent than the ones they have behind the Eversource Edison building. Edison Way, there's a little, and it's actually in the Battle Green Historic District, which is, you know, the most holy of holy districts.
So what?
So anyway, that's the little.
You got enough there?
Yeah, no, on my what the communicate, and this is probably for another meeting, but what I sort of concluded with Gretchen was it might be worth our while in our, because we're going to miss this next year of going for grants, to actually use that year to work with the historic district to work out what areas could be used for a charging station, so we can start the process so that they kind of approved of something, so that when we come in with a grant, we don't always hit this delay. They're sort of up and running and everything's smooth sailing, and it'll be a lot easier for private owners if it's going onto their land. It doesn't have to be on public land, obviously. But we need to, this is something we should be doing at Ishufel as a committee, is working with them so that we've made the whole process of getting electric charging stations not a big issue in town. You know, they're not against them per se, they just, you know, they have a committee, there's a process we have to go through. So let's make the pathway that makes it as easy as possible. So I thought that was a really good idea that we can put into another meeting.
Yeah, Bob, you said that we were going to, you know, lay low for this year anyway, because the state.
You don't need to vote on it. Do you need to vote?
I think we just decided that we don't need to vote on this.
And I just realized we still have a quorum, because we've got 4 of us, so.
Oh,
You're welcome
you
to
would
leave.
still have a form, okay.
So, thank you. for
Sorry, no,
hanging in there.
I know, I mean, we didn't actually,
My apologies.
we
That's
didn't
okay.
participate too bad for this year, it just wasn't scheduled. We did the British New Year.
Right.
Much easier, after 7 o'clock in the evening.
Well,
So, I mean, it seems the state kind of wants you to take an every other year approach, right?
Well, that's what I'm hearing from others. I mean,
But
I-
other towns
I
are
haven't-
being very aggressive and going every year, but
Well, what I can say that Neil Duffy of DOER said is that he certainly, they do not want to see people getting grants for projects and then canceling them just so they will be eligible to bid again. That will not fly.
Right.
And so, yeah, take your time, spend the money. They only leave us with 6 months to spend the money anyway, as it turns out. They don't give us a year to spend it.
Well,
they
you
don't.
can ask for the
When,
extension.
I don't.
This
When,
year, anyway, yeah.
well, when did the money come available?
that's the thing that I
Was it
actually
May?
need to know, because so it came in on the 24th or 29th, it's on your email, for the contract, but that is not the date that they send us the information. And I forgot to ask Priscilla about that, or actually it'll be probably Tim, it's the date we send the contract back, is the date we started.
No
And I
idea.
don't know what day the town sent the contract back for the green community saying they
Okay.
accepted the grant. And I'm not, if we don't have it, I'm just gonna send it in. I mean, they're asking for a report on the 4th of January, for goodness sake.
They have that date.
And they have the date, it's there. So,
They're asking
I'm not
us the
gonna,
date.
if I can't get the information, I'm not gonna worry about it.
Right,
The only
agreed.
thing, I mean, I think it's good because it did force me, going through this, did force me to go to the town planning committee this morning and find out all these actual dates. The one thing I haven't got is that the contract was reviewed by the town council, and do you have a date for that in your emails at all? Claude, you said
Yeah.
that they,
Reviewed, what, the.
roughly a date, that
Eversource
it was
contract?
reviewed, the Eversource contract
Oh,
was reviewed by
yes,
the town
okay, yeah.
council,
I
and that's the
I'll
only
give you
thing
an exact
missing.
date where they got back to me as to,
And I'm just going for the future things that are gonna happen in the future, I'm just gonna throw dates at there and who knows what it will know, but it looks like we've thought about it. Sorry, that's being recorded. I don't know when we're going to get the application from the owner from Everest, you know. So, but at least it does make us plan, which is the whole point of doing this quarterly report.
yeah.
Makes us realise what we've got to do. So that was the main outcome from, the two main outcomes. We're going to definitely miss the deadlines for the next year's green communities because of this charging station, and that we can reuse, hopefully retake the money and use it for this transportation plans. Those are the two things that have actually come out from doing this report.
So, how are we going, when and how should we approach Neil about repurposing the money? I guess we have to get
I think we have to go and
updated
find an
quote first.
updated quote and then say, can we take this money?
Because there's a reason they only gave us half the money we asked for. in
Well,
the
it could
first
have been
place.
they were just trying to, they were just saying, you know, I know Concord didn't get what they're asking for either, so, you know, they may have just said, we're focusing on certain types, you know, like we want LED lights, we want this, that, next thing, you know, the usual things they do. I mean, the brick building, every year we try and we never get anything.
Alright.
So,
So I'm pretty busy this week, so I'm not gonna be able to call Guardian until next week.
my only question was, it says name and title of person submitting this quarterly report. Do we need to get Nathan to sign this?
I think the yearly report you do, we did,
I think John Mativier does. This is
John submits it supposedly.
So I have to get it to John tomorrow, so he will submit it.
John submits it.
Okay, I have to do this tonight. Okay, this last bit. I'm just tidying up and deleting
Maybe
things.
send it, John, can you send me a copy so I have?
No, I'll send it to
Send
you
all
too.
of us, or just?
No, I'll send it to the people who are project managers. So Basu,
Okay.
you. I'm not going to send it to Dan. He hasn't really. Should I say? I'll send it to
Send
Dan.
it to Dan, because,
Claude.
he's the one who's been working with Guardian, especially in this town hall. And-
All right, so he has. I thought Dan had. I haven't seen Dan for.
I've been kinda helping him, if you will.
Okay. Okay, so I'll send it to all the project managers, and then I'll ask John to sign it. Because the grant request, I think this letter was originally sent to John, I think, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay, November
Any-
8th
Okay.
was when she responded.
Okay,
I'm forwarding you the email,
great.
her response.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else? We good on that?
That's it. I'll get John to send this in,
Great,
and
thank
then
you.
that means I have to get it done by tomorrow morning. I'm going to send him an email this thing. Tell him you'll see it tomorrow morning.
So can we, let's see, is there a motion to adjourn?
Could we say a couple of words on the municipal solar, just to
Yeah,
Oh,
since
I'm
you've
sorry,
been
I
sitting
didn't-
here,
so-
it seemed a bit cruel.
You're the,
Just, so,
I can do it.
so I just wanted to say, we did meet with the school committee.
Okay.
They were generally receptive. They asked to make sure that the parking lot paving was included. That was taken, whatever, on December 12th or whatever. Tim Goddard did set up the working group under him that is going to be negotiating with Amoresco to do the 2 canopies over the transfer station and over the school. We had a first meeting. We met with town council. Town council is aware that we need to update the bylaw and is beginning work on drafting it. And we will be meeting with Amoresco next week on, I think, the 9th. The working group will be meeting with Amoresco to have initial discussions about, what needs to happen. And so, the next important date is, I believe, January 22nd. We have to have some set of things on the town warrant to get this done in April. Amoresco would like to do the work, especially at the school, this coming summer. And so time is of the essence to get it through town meeting and everything there. So,
And Tim knows about that, right?
Tim knows
So
about
he's gonna
that,
put a
and-
placeholder for the warrant article?
so I'm gonna make sure that that's on there for the 9th.
Just-
And
Sorry.
so,
The only fly in the ointment I can see is when we update the bylaws, is updating the bylaws, does it have to go through the state? Or is it something that isn't, as it's not a new bylaw, it's okay for us and we don't have that whole delay of going through it again? The state
I
attorney.
do not know,
general to-
but town council is on top of it.
Yes,
So-
that's the only thing
Um,
the two might not
Normally,
communicate it.
normally we go ahead and follow our bylaw after we voted it, and then the state comes in maybe 5 years later and says.
I know,
yeah,
well,
okay.
maybe that's what the town,
Yeah.
I just, I was just like, that's the only thing I,
It's a little
possible fly, that's,
So I
by the
believe-
time, I was just gonna say, by the time we actually come to agreeing the goals, we'll probably have met half of them.
Well,
That's optimistic.
in any case, I believe everything is running smoothly on that. And so the school board does meet next week also. They don't vote on something the same day you present it to them, so they meet next week to vote on what got presented to them last time, I believe. So,
When are you guys gonna be there?
I don't know. I don't know that we're even on it, other than that they're gonna vote about it.
Right, but.
If they need to vote anything.
They're probably gonna vote on it, I assume that's what they said.
Right.
So, one of the members of that work group should be there.
Should be there,
Just
so,
in case they have questions.
alright. So I
just
better
so
touch
it goes
base with
positive.
David Modell to
Yeah,
make sure.
and if one of you guys can't go, I can go.
Okay.
Yeah.
It might be good for you to be there anyways, but, yeah.
Okay, when is it?
I don't know when the school committee meeting is, but it's next week sometime.
Sometime? If you find out, let me know.
I think it might be next week Wednesday.
Next
I
Wednesday.
could be wrong.
Can I just talk about the website for 2 seconds? As it's so ongoing.
You know what, I'm at the point where I've demonstrated complete incompetence in managing the meetings of our old life, certainly.
Oh no, I mean,
People are
it's,
still standing, if people need to
you know
leave,
what,
they
it was
should go.
actually really great, because it was a real download of lots of information of lots of other groups have been working
two
on,
big
and I actually
projects,
found it really interesting, so, and I was very good at New Year, so I'm fine. I've started a template of a website, just have a look at it, I sort of drop into it sort of the odd evening and sort of add things into it as I find things or I know I've got things in my computer. I'm just at the moment just putting information into the website. Obviously you can chop and change where the information is and how the layout is and all that. It's a bit plug and play. But I think it's really important to get the information out. And it does mean that I do data dives, like finding out that our emissions are actually going to be great once we get 100% renewable with the school. We're down to 50% reduction in our emissions, carbon emissions, if you believe our electricity is 100% renewable.
For the municipal.
the municipal.
Yeah.
So, which is actually a remarkable achievement, because I think the school is due to renegotiate this year.
They just
They
renegotiated something, you're
They
talking
did
electricity?
2017, they did the electricity,
3 years, so.
so, yeah, it's 2020 maybe. Maybe
So
it's
the
2 years, it was 2
electricity-
years the last time.
They
I'm not too sure what the last,
3 years,
yeah,
so.
anyway. But
So
I
half of our carbon is coming from electricity?
no, we have managed to reduce our carbon by 25% from, because of its,
Oh,
it's
we'll
on
be down
emissions and
another-
not MMBTU. Because
Yeah.
the way, and just by taking our electricity and making it renewable, the town is now, to this month, the town goes on to renewable energy.
Right, they jumped on.
They jump on, and that drops it by another
That means-
5%, but
that
our
means-
school is such an electricity hog.
Right, right.
If they go renewable,
Then we'll
they
be
will
down.
drop us down to 50%.
Wow.
Which is phenomenal, and is
We need to
really,
find
and I
out why we're
think it
using
is
so much
something
electricity.
we may need to start going to the school committee and telling them this, and saying, you know, we've managed to do it for the school, for the rest of the town, at effectively no cost. You need to do this. You need to jump on this bandwagon, because the rest of the town has done it, and you're kind of not doing it. And if it does take another year, but at least we said, we've put the idea in their head, saying,
Right.
this is really important.
Yeah.
Depends on how much they're paying for electricity.
And how much they'll pay when they come up for their new renewal. But it's still just saying to them, look, the whole town is doing it, and you're the only one that isn't. Only 18 people decided to opt out and go somewhere else, or opt out and take fossil fuel. I'm not too sure, but that's phenomenal. And Bob, I think the whole thing you did, I was in pulling our 6 months of discussion on that long-term goals into something that was only 12 slides long was absolutely phenomenal. And I think actually pushing that community aggregation to 100% renewable, everybody who worked on that, that was the most important thing we've probably ever done. And I think we should actually all pat ourselves on the back.
So,
And we should, so going back to we do things we actually have done. We are probably above most towns, what Newton was making such a thing about, they went to 6% renewables and it was all from New England, and I went, so what? We went to 100% renewables. I don't care if it comes from Texas.
Right.
but paradoxically, to Bob's point, the people who have solar panels on their house and are getting these SRECs are the ones who are opted out effectively of this municipal aggregation.
Why?
Why? I'm in it.
I'm in it.
Well, but we're not paying an electric bill, so we're not buying any electricity.
Well,
So
not necessarily.
I'm effectively not in it, right? Because if you don't buy any, you're not in it. Which means that we are and because we sold the SRECs, we're not really, according to Bob's point, and I've made this point before also, we can't, otherwise we're double counting.
We're
Somebody
not
else is
green.
counting our solar electricity.
Right.
So what electricity are we really using? Well, we're using
The double dipping one.
yeah, I don't know whether that's an interesting philosophical thing. Are we
Yeah.
using the municipal aggregation, mix, or are we using the default mix? from
All I can
utility?
say is the reason this renewable energy certificates were set up is the idea of whoever bought those gets to claim.
No, I know,
That's
yeah.
the whole point.
In the meantime, I'm getting free electricity too. So, way.
It's
Yeah.
true. It's
But
kind of
we
a
have to-
win-win.
Yeah, right.
So we might be double counting, but we're winning twice too. So it's right.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have solar panels
Anything
too.
else?
So,
Anything else you got? 10 o'clock, 10:15.
10 o'clock, yeah, it's
So,
time to go home.
Have to go home.
the
Time
only
to
thing,
get
the
out,
only
yeah.
thing I wanted to bring up, thank you for working on the website, the only thing I wanted to bring up is about whether, the stuff you're creating stays on Weebly or whether it gets actually transferred over to the town website. I'm not saying which way we should do it, I'm saying that, to me, the considerations are, if it's on the town website, we can get, if we need to, or want to, we can get town staff people to do the work to maintain it. We provide the content, they put it up. If we keep it on Weebly, I doubt they'll maintain it on Weebly.
And then we have the same situation we had before, is that it's single source, and when Deb disappears sometime
No,
in the
no.
future,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
Even if
That's-
even if it stays on Weebly, you give them the password. It's
no.
all set up, and they
But-
can go in, or they can take it and
well,
they can
before we
play.
assume that, we have to talk to Mary and Jen
Yeah,
and
yeah.
find out that
But-
they actually are willing
I
to do
I
it.
prefer it
think
to be
what-
on the town website.
but-
so.
They may say no, or they may not, I don't know.
Right.
And you're right, I shouldn't assume they won't do it, but I wouldn't assume they will
And
do it.
the reason for us having this at control is it's very easy to just drop into it's it's one of the most user-friendly
But
web
But we
pages
do have,
designs.
we do have
And so it means that
access-
we can change the content until we're happy with it, and then we can say, okay, here's the content we want. You can go and access it. We can even download the files and give it to
Yeah,
them.
I don't know how that works with the town website, but we have, if we want it, we have direct access to put stuff on the town apps, on the website. We have so far chosen not to do it that way.
Right.
But I don't know how difficult
No, but
that is to do.
I think what we have to do is decide how we want, part of the reason for doing this is I tried a slightly alternative way of approaching, this is a shop window for information for the town. It's more, so it's trying to be as user-friendly and, specific to, like, residents come first, because that's who, obviously, I think our biggest market will be.
Yeah. I
rather
just,
than
all I'm
town.
suggesting is you just have at some point have a discussion with Mary and get her thoughts on
And
it.
then I think we should have a vote from the committee, because I firmly believe that if that information should be on the town website, so maintained by the town, and therefore it's continuously there forever. What happened with our Green Communities website, it got stale because we went off on a separate thing, we didn't really have an opportunity anyway.
No.
And now we have a Green Communities website that's so stale.
No, I,
That's it.
personally,
So-
I don't have any issue, it's more like, is this the kind of information you want on it?
Right.
Rather than going to a staff member and getting them to change it or
And
whatever.
I
Or how the layout that,
Yeah.
I don't know the layout that David's used, how it works, I have no idea.
right.
Cause I use plug and play, I don't use,
Right, right, because
You
there's
know,
a
I
format,
don't
so
write
that
code.
when the residents go to the town webpage, they know, at least, I think it was 5 pages deep when it was first designed for, that it's consistent to every department.
And I'm gonna guess
And that's
that
where-
our landing page, whatever,
Exactly.
the Energy Task Force page is gonna keep that format.
Right.
oh, you know, you
What
can
happens
change it, yeah.
below that, you
Right.
know,
After
maybe
the 5th
we.
page or 4th page, whatever it was, then I
But
could,
before I want to involve other people, I want to make sure that the committee is happy with the data that's on there, or the information that's on there. And it's
Yeah.
presented in the way, in the priorities,
No, no,
are
no, no,
presented
no,
in the
no.
way they want, and that's
No,
why
this
it's
is-
easiest to do this.
Two different.
No, that's, we understand that, that's perfectly fine.
Let's have a separate discussion on this.
Yeah, exactly, I know, I mean, I just wanted to, just send me your comments,
Yeah.
it was just like, that was all I wanted.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Motion to adjourn?
And John?
do I have a motion to adjourn?
You have one, I gave you one, right?
Okay, do we have to second it?
Second.
Second,
I'll agree.
okay. All
We're
those
normally
in
renowned
favor?
for being out by 8 o'clock.
All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned
Your
at
system's been off since 9.
10:14.